If you're watching this, it means you've recently acquired a time machine. I assume you're planning a visit to the American West in the 1880s, specifically Dodge City, Kansas. It's a fascinating choice, and honestly, one of the more accessible time travel destinations you could pick, but don't let that fool you into thinking it's going to be easy or safe. The Wild West wasn't wild because it was fun. It was wild because it was dangerous, unpredictable, and existed in a kind of legal and social limbo that modern Americans would find deeply unsettling. Let me give you some context first. You're going to 1880s Dodge City, which means you're arriving during what people call the Cattle Town era. Dodge City sits on the Arkansas River in southwestern Kansas, and by the 1880s it's become one of the most important shipping points for Texas longhorn cattle being driven north. The Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad runs right through town, and that railroad is what makes Dodge City matter. Cowboys drive massive herds up from Texas along the Western Trail, arrive in Dodge City exhausted and ready to spend their wages, load the cattle onto rail cars, and the cattle head east to Kansas City and Chicago. The money flowing through this town is enormous, and wherever you have that kind of money, you're going to have people trying to take it, legally and illegally. Now, Dodge City in the 1880s has a reputation. It's known as the wickedest little city in America and the beautiful bibulous Babylon of the frontier. That's not entirely fair. Most cattle towns had similar problems, and Dodge actually had lower murder rates than some eastern cities of the era. But the reputation exists for a reason. This is a place where violence can erupt suddenly, where the legal system is barely functional, where fortunes are made and lost in a night of gambling, and where social rules are different from anything you're used to. It's exciting, yes, but you need to understand what you're walking into. A few important things before we get into specifics. First, the Wild West period is actually very short. By the 1890s, most of what we think of as the Wild West is already over. The open range is closing, barbed wire is going up everywhere, the buffalo are nearly extinct, Native Americans have been forced onto reservations, and the railroad has connected everything. You're going to the 1880s, which means you're catching the tail end of this era. Dodge City specifically will start to decline after 1886, when the cattle drives shift to other routes. So you're visiting during its peak years, but even then, you can feel the change coming. Second, forget almost everything you've seen in Western movies. The reality is different. Not necessarily less interesting, but different. Cowboys didn't have shootouts in the street every day. Most people didn't carry guns openly in town because many cattle towns had laws against it. The saloons were rougher and grimier than Hollywood, suggests. Women were actually present and active in frontier towns, not just dance hall girls and school moms. The racial diversity would probably surprise you. You'll see black cowboys, Mexican vaqueros, Chinese laborers, and people from all over Europe. The West wasn't nearly as white as movies suggest. Third, understand that you're visiting during a period of enormous violence toward Native Americans. The 1880s is when the US government is actively crushing the last resistance of Plains tribes. The Lakota, Cheyenne, Comanche, and other nations who controlled these plains just a few decades earlier are being systematically destroyed. You won't see much of this directly in Dodge City itself. The town is hundreds of miles from most reservations, but you'll hear about it, you'll see the aftermath, and you need to be aware that you're witnessing a genocide. All right, let's talk about the physical dangers first, because they're significant. The biggest threat to your health in 1880s Dodge City is going to be gastrointestinal disease. I know that doesn't sound dramatic compared to shootouts and stampedes, but it's what's most likely to actually hurt you. The water supply in Dodge is questionable at best. The Arkansas River runs right through town, and it's downstream from cattle operations, mining runoff, and every kind of contamination you can imagine. The town wells are better, but not by much. You're going to want to drink beer or whiskey more than water, and I'm not joking. The alcohol content made them safer than most water sources, but even then, you're going to have stomach problems. There's no pasteurization, no refrigeration to speak of, limited understanding of food safety. Bring modern anti-diarrheal medication with you. Bring antibiotics if you can get them prescribed before you go, and be very careful about what you eat and drink. Food poisoning is a real risk. Meat sits out in the heat. Flies are everywhere. Nothing is screened or covered properly. The smell in summer, we'll get to that later, is overwhelming, and part of that smell is rotting food. If something tastes off, don't eat it. If milk tastes weird, don't drink it. I know you'll want to try authentic frontier food, but use common sense. Stick to things that are cooked thoroughly. Avoid dairy if it seems questionable. Be cautious with preserved meats. The food will be interesting. Lots of beef, beans, biscuits, salt pork, dried fruit, canned goods. But it's not going to be particularly safe by modern standards. Then there's the sun. The Kansas prairie in summer is brutal. Temperatures regularly hit 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity from the river makes it worse, and there's almost no shade. The sun beats down relentlessly. You're going to need a hat. A real frontier hat with a wide brim, not some costume shop nonsense. You'll see men in bowlers, sombreros, and various wide-brimmed styles. Get something practical that keeps the sun off your neck. Sunburn out here is dangerous. There's no sunscreen, obviously, so covering up is your only option. You'll also need to drink more water than you think, even though the water is risky. Dehydration kills people on the prairie. Winter, on the other hand, gets cold. Really cold. Dodge City in January can drop well below zero, and the wind on the plains is constant and cutting. If you're visiting in winter, you need to understand that heating is marginal at best. Most buildings have pot-bellied stoves, but they don't heat the space evenly or effectively. You'll be cold a lot. Frostbite is a real concern if you're outside for any length of time. People died of exposure on the frontier regularly, even in town because they got drunk and passed out outside on a cold night. There's also the dust. My God, the dust. Dodge City streets are unpaved, just packed dirt that turns to either dust or mud depending on weather. When it's dry, which is most of the time, the dust is constant. Every wagon, every horse, every person walking kicks up clouds of it. It gets in your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your clothes. You'll be tasting dust the entire time you're there. When it rains, the streets become knee-deep mud that sucks at your boots and makes walking exhausting. There's no winning. The dust also carries disease. Tuberculosis spreads easily in these conditions, and consumption, as they call it, is one of the major killers on the frontier. Now let's talk about personal safety, because this is probably what you're most worried about, and you should be. Dodge City in the 1880s is not a place where you can relax your guard. The murder rate isn't as high as legend suggests, usually 5 to 10 murders per year in a town of about 200 people. But that's still significantly higher than modern American cities. And murders aren't the only violence you need to worry about. Assault is common, robbery is common, rape is common, though rarely prosecuted. If you appear vulnerable, someone will try to take advantage of you. The violence isn't random, though. That's important to understand. Most violence in Dodge City follows predictable patterns. It happens late at night after heavy drinking. It happens during arguments over gambling debts or women or perceived insults. It happens when cowboys who've been on the trail for months finally hit town and blow off steam in destructive ways. If you're careful, if you're aware of your surroundings, if you avoid certain situations, you can minimize your risk significantly. Here's what you need to know. Don't go south of the railroad tracks after dark unless you absolutely have to. That's where most of the saloons, brothels and gambling dens are located. The area locals call the South Side, or sometimes the Devil's Addition. During the day it's rowdy but manageable. At night, especially on weekends when cowboys are in town with money, it becomes genuinely dangerous. Fights break out constantly. People get stabbed or shot. Women get assaulted. If you're going to visit the South Side, and you probably should because it's where the action is, go early in the evening, stay alert and leave before midnight. Don't gamble unless you know what you're doing and can afford to lose. The card games in Dodge City saloons are often rigged, and even when they're not, accusing someone of cheating can get you killed. Professional gamblers work these cattle towns, and they're good at what they do. They can spot marks easily, and they're backed by saloon owners who don't want trouble, which means if you cause a scene, you're the one who gets thrown out or worse. If you do gamble, set a limit before you start and stick to it. Watch how much you drink while gambling. That's how they get you. Don't insult anyone, even as a joke. Honor culture is strong on the frontier, and men, it's almost always men, take offence at things that would seem trivial to modern sensibilities. Looking at someone the wrong way can start a fight. Making a comment about someone's clothes, their accent, their competence at cards or shooting. These things lead to violence. The concept of fighting words is very real here. If someone feels their honour has been impugned, they're expected to respond with violence or be seen as a coward. You don't have to participate in this culture, but you have to be aware of it and navigate around it carefully. Regarding weapons, Dodge City actually has a gun ordinance. You're not supposed to carry firearms within city limits. There's a famous sign, "The carrying of firearms strictly prohibited." But enforcement is inconsistent. Cowboys coming in from the trail are supposed to check their guns at the saloons or the sheriff's office, and many do, but plenty don't. You'll see men carrying guns openly, and you'll see others without them. The marshal and his deputies carry guns, obviously, and they're the ones who are supposed to enforce the ordinance. Should you carry a weapon? That's complicated. If you carry a gun, you need to know how to use it, and you need to be prepared for the possibility that you might have to actually shoot someone. Frontier justice is harsh but also weirdly nuanced. If you shoot someone in clear self-defense, you'll probably be fine legally. There might not even be a trial. But if there's any ambiguity, if witnesses disagree about who started it, you could end up hanged. Also, if you're carrying a gun and you get into an argument, the argument is much more likely to turn fatal. So there's a real calculation to make here. My suggestion? Carry a knife. Everyone carries knives. They're tools as much as weapons. A folding knife or a sheath knife won't raise eyebrows, and it gives you some protection without advertising that you're armed. If you feel you need more protection than that, consider carrying a small pistol concealed, a derringer or pocket revolver, something you can hide. But honestly, your best protection is staying alert, avoiding dangerous situations and not standing out. Let me talk about money now, because understanding the currency situation will make your life much easier. The United States in the 1880s uses both paper money and coins, but out west people prefer coins, specifically silver and gold coins. Paper money exists, but there's a lot of distrust of it because banks failed regularly and paper money could become worthless overnight. Coins have intrinsic value because they're made of precious metal, so that's what people trust. The basic denominations are pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, half dollars, silver dollars, and gold coins in various denominations. For your purposes, you'll mostly be working with silver dollars and smaller coins. A silver dollar is a day's wage for a labourer. A cowboy at the end of a cattle drive might have $30 to $50 saved up. That's 3 to 5 months of work, and he'll typically blow through most of it in a week or two in town. A beer costs 5 to 10 cents. A meal costs 25 to 50 cents. A night in a cheap hotel room costs 50 cents to $1. A night with a prostitute costs $1 to $5 depending on the establishment. A good horse costs $50 to $150. A Colt revolver costs $15 to $20. You'll need to bring period-appropriate currency with you. You can find 1880s coins pretty easily. Silver dollars, quarters, dimes, nickels from that era are common among coin collectors and not terribly expensive. Buy a mix of denominations before you go. I'd suggest bringing the equivalent of about $50 in period currency. That's enough for several days of food, lodging and entertainment without making you look too wealthy. Don't flash large amounts of money around. Don't let people see how much you're carrying. Keep most of it hidden on your person, maybe in a money belt under your clothes, and only carry a few dollars in your pocket for daily expenses. Gold coins are worth more but also more conspicuous. A $20 gold piece is a lot of money, and using one for small purchases will attract attention. If you bring gold coins, use them sparingly and be aware that when you do use them, people will remember you. Stick to silver when possible. Regarding lodging, you've got several options depending on how much comfort you want and how much you're willing to pay. The nicest place in town is the Dodge House, a 2-story hotel on Front Street north of the railroad tracks. It's got about 40 rooms, and it's where wealthier visitors stay. Cattle buyers, railroad men, professional gamblers, the occasional journalist or Eastern tourist. A room there costs about $1.50 to $2 per night. You get a bed, a washstand with pitcher and basin, maybe a chair and a small table. The bed will have sheets, not necessarily clean sheets, but sheets. There might be bed bugs. Probably will be bed bugs. The walls are thin, so you'll hear everything, happening in adjacent rooms, but it's respectable and it's relatively safe. If you want cheaper, there are smaller hotels and rooming houses scattered through town. These run 50 cents to $1 per night. The accommodations are more basic. Smaller rooms, rougher furniture, definitely bed bugs. You might be sharing a room with strangers. The beds might be rope beds with corn shuck mattresses rather than proper spring mattresses, but they're functional and they keep you out of the weather. There are also boarding houses where you can get room and board. meaning lodging plus meals, for about $5 to $7 per week. This is what a lot of working men do. The clerks and shopkeepers and skilled workers who live in Dodge City long term. The quality varies widely. Some boarding house keepers run tight ships with decent food and clean rooms. Others are basically slum housing. If you're planning to stay more than a few days, a boarding house might make sense, but inspect the place first if you can. The cheapest option is to sleep in a stable or barn. Some liveries and stables will let you sleep in the hayloft for 10 to 25 cents per night. It's not comfortable, hay is itchy, and you're sleeping in a building that smells like horse manure. But it's shelter, and it's what a lot of cowboys do when they're in town and broke. I don't recommend this unless you're really trying to experience frontier life authentically. You won't sleep well, and you'll wake up bitten by various insects. Whatever you choose, inspect the bed before you get in it. Look for bed bugs in the mattress seams. Check for lice in the bedding. If the sheets look filthy, you can ask for clean ones, though they might charge you extra. Some travellers brought their own bedding for this reason, a blanket roll that they could lay over questionable hotel sheets. That's not a bad idea if you're prepared to carry it around. One more thing about lodging: lock your door if there's a lock. Keep your valuables on your person even while you sleep. Hotel theft is common. If there's no lock, wedge a chair under the door handle. I'm not trying to scare you, but frontier hospitality has its limits, and theft is a constant problem in these cattle towns. For food, your options are more varied than you might expect. Dodge City in the 1880s has several restaurants, numerous saloons that serve food, street vendors selling snacks, and a public market where you can buy raw ingredients if you have access to a kitchen. The food quality ranges from surprisingly good to genuinely hazardous. The best restaurant in town is probably the one at the Dodge House Hotel. They serve what passes for fine dining on the frontier: beefsteaks, roasted chicken, pork chops, potatoes, beans, canned vegetables, pie, cake, coffee. The portions are large, the preparation is decent, and the prices are reasonable for what you get. A full meal might cost 50 cents to $1. The dining room is relatively civilized. There are tablecloths, you eat with actual silverware, and the clientele is the better class of visitor. For cheaper meals, there are smaller restaurants and lunch counters around town. These are working man establishments serving simple food quickly. You can get a plate of beans and beef for 25 cents, or a bowl of stew with bread for 15 cents. The quality is hit or miss. The meat might be tough, the beans might be undercooked or overcooked. But it's filling, and it's what most people eat most of the time. Saloons serve food too, usually free or very cheap with purchase of drinks. A lot of saloons have a free lunch spread. Bread, cheese, maybe some pickled eggs or sardines, crackers, that kind of thing. It's meant to encourage you to drink more, and it works. The food is usually salty, which makes you thirsty, which means you buy more beer or whiskey. But if you're trying to stretch your money, you can make a meal of free lunch if you buy one drink. Just don't abuse it. Saloon keepers notice people who come in, buy one 5-cent beer, and then load up on free food. There are also Chinese restaurants in Dodge City, which might surprise you. Chinese immigrants came to the West as railroad workers, miners, and laundry operators, and many opened restaurants. The food is different from modern Chinese-American food. It's adapted to frontier ingredients and tastes, but it's often quite good and usually cheaper than American restaurants. Don't be surprised if you see signs advertising chop suey or chow mein. These dishes were invented in America by Chinese immigrants specifically to appeal to American palates, and they're becoming popular in Western towns during this period. If you want to buy food to prepare yourself, there's a public market and various general stores. You can buy dried beans, flour, cornmeal, bacon, salt pork, canned goods, dried fruit, potatoes, onions, coffee, sugar. Fresh vegetables and fruit are limited depending on the season. In summer you might find locally grown produce, but most of the year everything is imported or preserved. Fresh milk is available if you can find a dairy, but remember what I said earlier about unpasteurized milk being risky. Street food exists too. You'll see vendors selling tamales. There's a significant Mexican population in Dodge City, and tamales are popular frontier street food. They're wrapped in corn husks, portable, cheap, filling. You might also find vendors selling popped corn, roasted peanuts, hard candies, that kind of thing. Now let's talk about the language barrier, which is actually less of a problem than you might think, but there are still some things to be aware of. Almost everyone in Dodge City speaks English, or at least enough English to conduct business. But the English you'll hear is going to sound different from modern American English, and there are regional accents and immigrant accents that might give you trouble. Cowboys, coming up from Texas, often have thick southern accents that can be hard to understand if you're not used to them. Mexican vaqueros might speak primarily Spanish with limited English. You'll hear German immigrants speaking German to each other and thickly accented English to everyone else. Chinese workers speak Cantonese among themselves. So while English is the common language, it's not the only language, and the English itself is going to sound different from what you're used to. The vocabulary is different too. Some words mean different things. Making a raise means getting money together. On the scout means on the run from the law. Hurdy-gurdy means a cheap dance hall. Bummer means a loafer, or someone who begs for drinks. People use profanity constantly, but the profanity is different. Damn and hell are common. Son of a bitch is fighting words. God damn is considered seriously blasphemous and offensive. Modern profanity like the F-word is around, but less common than you'd expect. It's considered shockingly vulgar even on the frontier. The grammar is slightly different too. People say things like, I seen him yesterday instead of I saw him. They say he don't instead of he doesn't. Educated people speak more formally than we do now. Longer sentences, more elaborate constructions. Working class people and cowboys speak more roughly, with lots of slang and dropped consonants. My advice, speak simply and clearly. Don't try to affect a frontier accent because you'll sound ridiculous and people will know you're faking. Your modern American accent is actually fine. Regional variation was common in the 1880s, and there were people from all over the country mixing together in western towns, so nobody's going to think it's that weird if you sound a little different. Just avoid obviously modern slang. Don't say cool or awesome. Don't reference anything that won't exist for another few decades. If someone speaks Spanish to you and you don't speak Spanish, just be honest about it. Say, I don't speak Spanish, and they'll switch to English if they can, or you'll have to use gestures. Don't assume every Mexican person speaks English, but many do, especially in a commercial hub like Dodge City, where conducting business across language barriers is a daily necessity. One more language note. Be careful with how you address people. Sir and ma'am are standard polite forms of address. If you don't know someone's name, that's what you use. First names are only for people you know well. You don't call someone by their first name unless you've been invited to do so, or your peers in a casual setting. This is more formal than modern American culture, and it matters. Addressing someone too familiarly can cause offence. Speaking of social class, let's talk about what that means in 1880s Dodge City, because it's complicated. The frontier is often portrayed as egalitarian, and in some ways it is. There's no hereditary aristocracy. Anyone can theoretically make money and move up in the world. But there are absolutely class distinctions, and people are very aware of them. At the top you've got wealthy cattlemen, successful merchants, railroad executives, bankers, lawyers, the people with real money and power. These men, and they're almost all men, run the town. They sit on the city council, they own the major businesses, they decide who gets credit and who doesn't. They wear expensive suits, they have gold watch chains, they smoke cigars, they drink whiskey instead of beer. They live in proper houses north of the tracks, away from the rougher part of town. Their wives dress fashionably, or as fashionably as you can dress on the frontier, and they organise church socials and try to impose Eastern standards of respectability on this decidedly disreputable place. Below them are the middle class, shop clerks, skilled craftsmen, small business owners, school teachers, clerks at the railroad office. These people make steady wages, they dress neatly but not expensively, they aspire to respectability. They're trying to build permanent lives in Dodge City rather than just passing through. They join fraternal organisations, they go to church, they save money, they look down on the rougher elements of town even though they depend on the cattle trade economically. Then you've got working class men, cowboys, teamsters, railroad workers, labourers of various kinds. They make wages that are sometimes good, sometimes terrible, but they're always precarious. A cowboy might make $30 a month plus food, but he's only got work during the driving season. Railroad workers make similar wages. These men live in cheap hotels or boarding houses, they drink in the cheaper saloons, they gamble, they visit prostitutes. They're looked down on by respectable society, but they're also the reason Dodge City exists. Without the cattle drives, there's no town. At the bottom are people on the margins, unemployed men, drifters, petty criminals, prostitutes, Chinese and Mexican labourers who face discrimination. These people are barely scraping by, living day to day, one bad break away from complete destitution. Society doesn't care much about what happens to them. Women's positions in this class structure are even more complicated. Respectable married women take their husband's class status. A wealthy merchant's wife is upper class. A shop clerk's wife is middle class. But single women have very few options. They can be teachers, middle class, respectable, but low paying. They can be servants, working class. Or they can work in the sex industry, which ranges from high-class courtesans who make good money to desperate women working in the roughest brothels for pennies. The racial dimension adds another layer. Black cowboys and workers exist, and in some ways the frontier is less segregated than the post-Reconstruction South, but discrimination is still very real. Mexican vaqueros are often paid less than white cowboys for the same work. Chinese workers face open hostility and are restricted to certain occupations. Native Americans are viewed with suspicion or contempt by most white settlers, especially this soon after the Indian Wars. Where do you fit into all this? That depends on how you present yourself. Your backstory matters enormously. Are you a wealthy traveller from the East seeing the frontier before it disappears? That puts you at the top of the social hierarchy, and people will treat you with deference, but they'll also see you as a mark to be fleeced. Are you a middle-class professional? A journalist, perhaps? Or a surveyor? Or a cattle buyer? That's respectable, and gives you access to various social circles. Are you a working-class drifter looking for ranch work? That puts you at the bottom, but it's also the easiest backstory to maintain because nobody expects much from you. Think carefully about this before you arrive. Your speech will confirm it, your behaviour will cement it, and once people have placed you in a particular class, it's very difficult to move. The frontier has more mobility than established eastern cities, but it's not a free-for-all. People judge you constantly, and they make decisions about how to treat you based on those judgments. Now let me talk about clothing, because this is crucial, and you can't afford to get it wrong. What you wear will immediately tell everyone who you are, where you're from, and what your status is. Get it wrong, and you'll stand out in ways that could be dangerous. Let's start with men's clothing, since that's probably most relevant for visitors. The iconic cowboy look, the one you see in movies, is actually pretty accurate for working cowboys, with some modifications. Real cowboys wear wide-brimmed hats, yes, but they're working hats that are dusty, sweat-stained, and shaped by weather and use. A brand new perfectly shaped hat looks wrong. Cowboys wear long-sleeved shirts even in summer because the sun is brutal. The shirts are usually cotton or wool, often in solid colours or simple patterns, and they're held up with suspenders because belts aren't common for working-class men yet. Belts are starting to become fashionable, but suspenders are still the norm. Pants are wool or canvas, often in dark colours. Denim exists. Levi Strauss has been making denim work pants for miners since the 1870s, and you will see them, especially on working men, but they're not as universal as modern Western movies suggest. Cowboys wear chaps over their pants when they're working cattle, but they usually take them off in town. Boots are essential, high boots with riding heels and pointed toes to fit stirrups easily. These boots are expensive, often the most expensive item of clothing a cowboy owns, and they're hard-wearing because they have to be. Around the neck, cowboys wear bandanas. These are functional, used to cover the mouth and nose against dust, to wipe sweat, to filter, water. The colour doesn't matter much. Red is common, but so are blue, black and white. On the head, you've got that wide-brimmed hat in various styles. Not everyone wears the same shaped crown. Some have tall crowns, some have low crowns, some have creased tops, some don't. The material is felt usually, though some cheaper hats are straw. For middle-class men and professionals, the clothing is different. They wear suits, wool suits even in summer because that's just what men wear. The suits are dark-coloured, usually black, dark brown or dark grey. White or light-coloured shirts underneath, often with detachable collars that can be washed separately. Vests are standard, neckties or bow ties. These men wear derby hats or bowlers rather than wide-brimmed cowboy hats. Their boots or shoes are dress shoes, not riding boots. Wealthy men dress similarly to middle-class men, but with better materials, better tailoring, more accessories. Gold watch chains are a sign of wealth, well-made boots, expensive hats. But the basic template is the same: suit, vest, tie, hat. If you're presenting as a working class man, dress like a cowboy or a labourer. If you're presenting as middle class, wear a suit. Simple as that. You can buy period-appropriate clothing before you go from costume suppliers, but make sure it looks worn. Nothing should look brand new. Dirt it up a bit. Sweat stain the hat. Scuff the boots. You want to look like you've been wearing these clothes, not like you just bought them. Women's clothing in the 1880s is elaborate and restrictive, and if you're a woman visiting Dodge City, you need to understand what you're getting into. Respectable women wear long dresses that cover them from neck to floor. The dresses have high collars, long sleeves, fitted bodices, and full skirts. Underneath, they're wearing multiple layers: a chemise, a corset cover, petticoats, drawers. The corset is tightly laced and genuinely uncomfortable. The full outfit weighs 10 to 20 pounds. In summer heat, this is borderline unbearable. Respectable women also wear hats or bonnets whenever they're in public. Hair is pinned up, never worn down in public by adult women. The whole ensemble is designed to make women look modest, feminine, and prosperous, because all those layers of clothing are expensive, and being able to afford elaborate dresses is a status symbol. Working class women wear simpler versions of the same thing. Cotton dresses rather than silk or wool, fewer petticoats, less elaborate hats. But the basic structure is the same. Even prostitutes wear similar clothing when they're out in public, though their dresses might be more colourful or lower cut. The distinction between respectable and fallen women is often more about behaviour and location than about clothing itself. If you're a woman visiting Dodge City, you have a choice to make. You can dress as a respectable woman, which gives you protection in some ways. Respectable women are not supposed to be bothered or harassed, but it also restricts where you can go and what you can do. Respectable women don't go into saloons. They don't go to the South Side. They don't walk around unaccompanied after dark. If you break those rules, you're inviting harassment and worse. Or you can present as a working woman of some kind, maybe a dance hall girl or a hurdy-gurdy girl. This gives you more freedom of movement, more ability to go places and see things, but it also means men will assume you're available sexually, and you'll face constant harassment. There's no good option here. The frontier is genuinely more dangerous for women than for men, and I won't pretend otherwise. One possibility: dress as a respectable woman but claim you're a journalist or a writer working on a book about the West. This is not unprecedented. There were female journalists and writers who visited frontier towns in the 1880s and wrote about them. It gives you an excuse to be in places respectable women normally wouldn't go, and it explains why you're asking questions. But you'll still face skepticism and some harassment. Let's talk about what to bring with you. And this is important because what you bring and what you don't bring can make or break your trip. Obviously don't bring anything that's obviously modern. No plastic anything, no synthetic fabrics, no zippers. Zippers don't become common until the 1920s. No Velcro, no modern logos, no digital anything that you can't hide completely. Do bring a good knife, period-appropriate money, any medications you need, basic first aid supplies that look period-appropriate, bandages, maybe some laudanum bottles filled with modern painkillers, a pocket watch if you want to fit in with the middle class, period-appropriate eyeglasses if you need them, wireframe glasses existed in the 1880s, and maybe a small notebook and pencil for taking notes. Bring water purification tablets if you can disguise them somehow, maybe in an old aspirin tin or something that looks period appropriate. Don't bring your phone, obviously, your wallet with modern ID and credit cards, modern sunglasses, a digital camera, any book or printed material with modern dates on it, modern medicines in clearly labelled modern bottles, anything with barcodes, modern fonts or contemporary designs. The less you bring, the better. Travel light. Anything you bring is something that can get stolen or lost or examined by curious people, so minimise the risk. Now let's talk about creating your backstory, because you're going to need one, and it needs to be convincing. People in Dodge City are going to ask you questions. Where are you from? What brings you to Dodge City? How long are you staying? What's your business? These aren't idle questions. People need to place you in their social landscape. They need to know if you're trustworthy, if you're a threat, if you're someone they should help or avoid. Your backstory needs to be simple, plausible, and hard to disprove. The more elaborate your story, the more likely you are to get details wrong or contradict yourself. Keep it basic. Option 1. You're from back east. Maybe Pennsylvania, maybe Ohio, maybe Illinois, and you've come west to see the frontier before it disappears. This is plausible because many people did exactly that in the 1880s. You're interested in the cattle trade, or you're thinking about investing in Western land, or you're just curious. This works well if you want to present as middle class or wealthy. It explains why you're asking questions and looking around at everything. The downside is people might try to sell you things or cheat you, because Easterners were seen as naive and easy marks. Option 2. You're looking for work. Maybe you're looking to sign on with a ranch as a cowboy, or you're looking for work on the railroad, or you're a skilled tradesman looking for opportunities. This works if you want to blend in with the working class. The downside is people might actually try to help you find work, which could be awkward. You'll need to have a reasonable explanation for why you haven't found work yet, and why you're not taking offers. Option 3. You're passing through on your way somewhere else. Maybe you're heading to Colorado or California or New Mexico, and you're just stopping in Dodge City for a few days to resupply and rest. This is good because it explains why you're temporary, and why you don't know much about the local area. The downside is people won't invest much time in getting to know you because they assume you're leaving soon. Option 4. You're a journalist or writer documenting the West. This is great if you want to ask lots of questions and go places and observe things. People might even help you and introduce you to interesting characters because they want to be part of your story. The downside is you'll need to actually know something about journalism and writing, and you'll need to be able to fake taking notes convincingly. Whatever backstory you choose, practice it before you go. Have answers ready for follow-up questions. If you say you're from Ohio, know which part of Ohio. If you say you're looking for ranch work, know what kind of work you've done before. If you say you're a journalist, know what publication you supposedly work for. Make one up, something generic like the Western Gazette that's hard to verify. And be consistent. If you tell one person you're from Ohio and another person you're from Pennsylvania, and those two people compare notes, you're going to have a problem. In a small town like Dodge City, information spreads fast. People talk. They'll figure out if you're lying, and then they'll want to know why you're lying, and that's when things get dangerous. Regarding arrival logistics, this is actually pretty straightforward for the 1880s West. Dodge City is on the railroad, which means you've got a plausible way to have arrived. You took the train. The Atchison, Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad runs right through town, with multiple trains per day during the busy season. People arrive by train constantly, so nobody's going to think it's weird that you showed up that way. But here's the thing. Don't actually arrive at the train station, because then people would have seen you arrive, and you won't be on the passenger manifest and the station agent might wonder who you are. Instead, arrive outside of town, maybe a mile or two out on the prairie, and then walk into town at a time when lots of other people are arriving. Early morning is good, or late afternoon. Make it look like you came in on foot from the direction of the railroad, like maybe you got off at a previous stop and walked the rest of the way, or like you've been travelling by wagon and just arrived. The terrain around Dodge City is open prairie with some cottonwood trees along the Arkansas River. In summer, the grass is tall and golden. In spring, it's green. In winter, it's brown and dead. Find a spot with some trees or tall grass where you can materialize without being seen. Early morning before dawn is your best bet. It'll be dark, there won't be many people around, and you can hide your time machine or whatever device you're using, and then wait for enough light to make your way into town. Don't arrive at night and immediately go into town, because towns on the frontier have a different energy after dark, and showing up in the middle of the night will make people suspicious. Wait until morning when there's legitimate traffic. Hide your time device carefully, bury it if you can, or hide it under deadfall or in a hollow tree. Mark the location somehow so you can find it again. Maybe pile some rocks in a specific pattern, or blaze a tree in a subtle way. You need to be able to get back to it, but you also need to make sure nobody else finds it while you're gone. Bring a bag or satchel with you, something period appropriate, so it looks like you're a traveller with luggage. Fill it with things that make sense, a change of clothes, maybe some toiletries, your money, whatever supplies you're bringing. When you walk into town, you should look like someone who's been travelling and has just arrived, not like someone who materialised out of thin air. When you get to town, your first stop should probably be to find lodging, like I described earlier. Check into a hotel or boarding house, get yourself settled, and then you can start exploring. Having a base of operations makes everything easier, and it makes you look more legitimate. You're not just a random person wandering around, you're a guest at the Dodge House or wherever, and that gives you a kind of respectability. One more thing about the time device. Think carefully about when you want to arrive. Summer is the busy season for cattle towns. That's when the cattle drives come through, when the cowboys are in town spending money, when everything is happening. If you arrive in summer, specifically June through September, you'll see Dodge City at its wildest and most active. The downside is it's hot, dusty, crowded and more dangerous. Winter is quieter. Fewer people, less activity, but also less to see. The advantage is you're less likely to get caught up in violence, and it's easier to move around without attracting attention. The disadvantage is it's cold. Some businesses might be closed or operating on reduced schedules, and there's simply less happening. Spring and fall are transition periods. Moderate weather, moderate activity. These might be your best options if you want a balance. Also think about what year in the 1880s you want to visit. Dodge City's peak years are 1883 to 1885. After 1886, the cattle drives start shifting to other routes, and the town begins to decline. If you want to see Dodge City at its most active and most western, aim for 1883 or 1884. Let me address one more concern that people always bring up. What about bringing modern knowledge back to the 1880s? What if you tell people about future events? What if you show them modern technology? What if you accidentally change history? First, don't tell anyone you're from the future. They'll think you're insane, and you'll get locked up or run out of town. Even if you can prove it somehow, you're just creating massive problems for yourself. There's no upside. Second, don't try to predict future events, even as a joke or a hypothetical. If you tell someone, in 1886 the cattle drives are going to stop coming through Dodge City, and then it actually happens, people are going to remember that you predicted it, and they're going to wonder how you knew. That kind of attention is dangerous. You could be accused of causing the problem somehow, or of being involved in some conspiracy. Just don't do it. Third, don't show people modern technology. I know it's tempting. I know you want to see their reactions, but it's a bad idea. Best case scenario, they think it's a magic trick or a curiosity from the Orient, and they're impressed but not that interested. Worst case scenario, they think you're a witch or a demon, or they think the technology is valuable, and they try to steal it and they might hurt you in the process. Just keep your modern stuff hidden. The one exception might be modern medicine. If you see someone suffering from something you could easily treat with modern medicine, let's say someone has an infected wound and you have antibiotics, you might be tempted to help them. This is a moral judgment you'll have to make for yourself. My advice is to be very careful about it. You could save someone's life, yes, but you could also expose yourself as someone with impossible knowledge, and that creates risks. If you do decide to help someone, do it anonymously if possible, or do it in a way that doesn't draw too much attention. Give them the medicine, but claim it's an herbal remedy from China or South America, or somewhere else exotic and far away. Now that you know what you need to know, it's time to turn on the machine and head back. Are you ready? You take a deep breath. The device feels cold in your hand despite the warmth of your 21st century room. Around you, everything is familiar. The soft hum of electronics, the filtered air conditioning, the LED glow from various devices, the muffled sound of traffic outside. You close your eyes. You've studied, you've prepared, you've got your period clothing in your bag and your silver dollars carefully counted. You think about Dodge City in 1883, about the dusty streets and the cattle and the chaos, and you wonder if you're really ready for what you're about to experience. But it's too late for doubt now. You've already decided. Your thumb finds the activation button. You press it. The familiar world begins to dissolve around you, the solid floor beneath your feet becoming uncertain, the air becoming thick and strange, and everything you know starts to slip away like sand through your fingers. You wake up. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not complete silence, there's sound all around you, but the absence of a specific kind of sound, a kind of ambient hum that you didn't even know you were hearing until it disappeared. No traffic, no airplane engines miles overhead, no electrical buzz from power lines or transformers or air conditioning units, no distant sirens. The mechanical soundtrack of modern life is simply gone, and in its absence the world sounds naked and strange. You're lying in tall grass. The grass is dry, brittle, golden brown, and it scratches at your neck and hands. The sky above you is enormous, bigger than any sky you've seen before. and it's filled with stars in a way that makes you catch your breath. There are so many stars. The Milky Way is a thick band of light across the darkness, and you can see individual stars in clusters and patterns that you've only seen in photographs. There's no light pollution at all. Humanity hasn't yet invented the electric grid that will wash out the stars, and the effect is overwhelming. You just lie there for a moment, staring up, trying to comprehend the sheer number of visible stars. The air smells different. It smells like dry grass and dust and something else. Something animal, maybe the scent of distant cattle or horses carried on the night wind. The wind itself is constant, blowing steadily from the southwest, making the grass rustle and whisper around you. It's not cold exactly, but there's a coolness to the air that surprises you. Summer nights on the plains get cool even when the days are blazing hot. You sit up slowly. Your body aches from lying on hard ground, and your clothes feel wrong. Too heavy, too restrictive. The wool pants, the long-sleeved cotton shirt, the vest, all of it feels like too much fabric, but you know you'll need it when the sun comes up. You reach for your hat, find it beside you in the grass, brush off the dust, and put it on. The wide brim feels strange but necessary. Around you, the prairie stretches in all directions. In the starlight you can make out the gentle roll of the land, the darker line where cottonwood trees mark the Arkansas River, and far to the east, barely visible, a faint glow that might be Dodge City. The town is about a mile away, maybe less. You picked this spot carefully, far enough from town that nobody would see you arrive, close enough that you can walk in at first light. You check your pocket watch. It's a railroad-grade Waltham pocket watch from 1881, and it reads 4:17 in the morning. Dawn won't come for another hour, maybe more. You have time to wait, time to adjust, time to prepare yourself mentally for what's about to happen. The time machine is hidden under a deadfall of cottonwood branches about 20 feet away. You can just make out the pile in the darkness. You dug a shallow depression, placed the device in it, and covered it with branches and dirt and grass. You piled some rocks nearby in a specific pattern, 3 rocks in a triangle, so you could find the spot again. Looking at it now, it seems obvious, but you remind yourself that nobody's looking for it. Nobody knows it exists, and as long as you can find it again when you need to leave, that's all that matters. You stand up, brush off your clothes, and start walking a slow circle around your hiding spot, trying to loosen up your muscles and adjust to the darkness. Your eyes are adapting now, and you can see more detail. The grass is mostly smooth brome and buffalo grass, matted down in places where cattle have walked or bedded down. There are prickly pear cacti scattered here and there, low to the ground and dangerous if you're not watching where you step. You've got good boots on, reproduction cowboy boots that you broke in for weeks before this trip, and you're grateful for them now. The wind shifts, and you catch a smell that makes you wrinkle your nose. A powerful organic stink that's part manure, part urine, part rotting vegetation. That's Dodge City you're smelling, carried on the breeze, a town of 1,200 people with no modern sanitation, with thousands of cattle passing through, with horses everywhere, with animal waste piling up in the streets and alleys. The smell is going to be intense once you get closer, and you brace yourself for it. You can hear cattle now too, a low bellowing in the distance, probably from the holding pens near the railroad tracks. The sound carries in the still night air, along with an occasional bark of a dog and once, very faintly, what might be a shout or a laugh from town. Someone's still awake, probably drunk, probably causing trouble. You're glad you're out here and not there. The eastern horizon is beginning to lighten. Not much, just a faint paling of the darkness, a suggestion of dawn still half an hour away. But it's enough to tell you that morning is coming, and soon you'll need to move. You need to time this right. Arrive in town when there are enough people moving around that one more stranger won't attract attention, but not so early that the innkeepers and restaurant owners aren't awake yet. You sit down again and wait. The temperature is dropping as dawn approaches. That's a quirk of prairie weather. The coldest moment is just before sunrise. You pull your vest tighter around you and watch the sky slowly change colour. The stars are fading now, the brightest ones still visible, but the fainter ones dissolving into the growing light. The Milky Way becomes less distinct, more of a suggestion than the bold river of light it was an hour ago. The first birds start calling. You don't recognise the species, you're not a bird watcher, but the sounds are different from city birds, longer and more complex songs. Meadowlarks, maybe, or prairie chickens. The sound is beautiful and strange, and it makes you realize how quiet the night had been, how few sounds there were beyond wind and grass and distant cattle. The sky's definitely lighter now, shifting from black to deep blue to a pale grey blue at the eastern edge. You can see the landscape more clearly, the rise and fall of the prairie, the dark line of trees along the river, and now, more distinctly, the town itself. Dodge City sits on the north bank of the Arkansas River, a cluster of wooden buildings huddled together like an organism seeking protection from the vastness around it. There are maybe 100 buildings visible from here, most of them small and square, a few larger two-story structures, and the long, low shape of what must be the cattle pens stretching west of town along the railroad tracks. Smoke rises from a few chimneys. People are waking up, starting fires for breakfast, beginning their day. It's time for you to move. You pick up your canvas travelling bag. It's got a change of clothes, some toiletries, your money carefully hidden in a secret pocket, and a few other supplies, and you start walking toward town. The grass brushes against your legs with each step, and you have to watch for prairie dog holes and cactus and other hazards. The ground is uneven, harder than you expected, and your boots make crunching sounds on the dry earth. As you get closer to town, you start to see cattle trails, broad swathes of churned earth where thousands of hooves have walked over the same ground. The grass is completely gone in these areas, replaced by bare dirt and dried manure. The smell gets stronger. You're walking through one of the main approach routes that cattle drives use when coming into Dodge City from the south, and the evidence is everywhere. Sun-bleached bones from animals that died on the trail, the remains of old campfires, trash and debris left by passing drovers. The sun breaks the horizon just as you reach the outskirts of town. The light is golden and harsh, throwing long shadows and making you squint. The temperature immediately starts to climb. Within 15 minutes, the pleasant coolness of dawn is gone, replaced by building heat that promises to become oppressive by midday. The first building you reach is a ramshackle structure that might be a stable or a storage shed. It's made of rough lumber, unpainted, already weathered grey by the harsh prairie sun and wind. The roof is rough shingles, and you can see gaps between the boards of the walls. Nobody's around. You walk past it, heading toward what looks like the main street, and then you're in Dodge City. The street is unpaved dirt, hard-packed in some places, loose and dusty in others. It's about 40 feet wide, and buildings line both sides, mostly one-story wooden structures with false fronts that make them look taller than they are. A few are brick, a few are 2 stories. Many have covered wooden sidewalks in front of them, raised about a foot off the ground to keep pedestrians out of the mud when it rains and out of the dust when it's dry. The dust is everywhere. Your boots kick up small clouds with each step. There's a thin layer of it on every surface, on the sidewalks, on the building fronts, on the windows, on the hitching rails where horses are tied. The wind picks it up and carries it in swirling eddies down the street. The smell hits you hard. It's worse than you expected, even after preparing yourself. It's a combination of things: horse manure and cattle manure baking in the sun, human waste from inadequate privies and cesspools, rotting garbage, tanneries and slaughterhouses doing their work nearby, unwashed human bodies, tobacco smoke, cooking smells from restaurants and cookshops. It's organic and thick, and it makes you want to breathe through your mouth. But everyone else seems unbothered by it, and you force yourself to adjust. This is just how places smell before modern sanitation. This is normal for 1883. The sounds are different too. No engines, no electronics, but plenty of noise. Horses everywhere, the clop of hooves on packed dirt, the jingle of harness and tack, snorting and stamping. Men's voices calling to each other, sometimes friendly, sometimes argumentative. The creak of wagon wheels, a rooster crowing from somewhere behind the buildings, a dog barking, the ringing of a hammer on anvil from what must be a blacksmith shop. You walk slowly down the main street, trying to take it all in without staring too obviously. Front Street, that's what they call it. The main commercial district running parallel to the railroad tracks. The buildings on your left, the north side of the street, are the more respectable businesses. You pass a general store with its front doors already open, a woman in a long dress and apron sweeping the wooden sidewalk. She glances at you as you pass, nods slightly and goes back to sweeping. A restaurant with Delmonico's painted on the window in fancy script. A furniture store with a bed frame and a rocking chair displayed outside. A dry goods store. a drugstore with colourful bottles of patent medicines visible in the window. On your right, the south side of Front Street, the buildings are similar but the businesses are different. More saloons, even this early in the morning. You can see into one as you pass, a long bar running down one side, a mirror behind it, bottles of liquor on shelves, tables scattered around the room, a few men already drinking even though it can't be much past 6 in the morning. A barbershop with the traditional red and white striped pole outside, another saloon, a billiard hall. These are the businesses that cater to the cowboys and drovers and working men who fuel Dodge City's economy. The railroad tracks cut across your path ahead, running east-west through the middle of town. The tracks are raised on a slight berm, and as you approach them you can see the cattle pens stretching to the west. Vast wooden corrals connected by gates and chutes, most of them empty right now but showing signs of recent heavy use. The smell from the pens is overwhelming, even from a distance. Manure piled everywhere, dried and fresh mixed together, and the lingering scent of thousands of cattle that have passed through. You cross the tracks carefully, looking both ways out of modern habit even though there's no train coming. On the other side, the town continues. More saloons, more businesses, and now you're seeing residential buildings too. Small houses, most of them little more than one-room cabins, made of wood or sometimes sod. Some have tiny yards with scraggly gardens trying to grow in the harsh prairie soil. You need to find a place to stay. The Dodge House is supposed to be the best hotel in town, and that's where you're headed. You ask directions from a man leading a horse down the street. He's wearing range clothes, dusty and worn, and he looks like he hasn't slept. He points you back toward Front Street, tells you the Dodge House is on the north side, can't miss it, and he moves on without asking who you are or what you're doing here. That's a relief. You were worried people would be more curious, more intrusive, but apparently strange faces are common enough in a cattle town that one more doesn't matter much. You find the Dodge House easily. It's a 2-story building with a painted sign and actual glass windows, not just shutters. The front door is open, and you walk into a small lobby. There's a desk with a clerk behind it. A young man, maybe 25, wearing a vest and tie and looking half asleep. He straightens up when you come in. "Help you?" His accent is interesting. Not quite southern, not quite northern. Something in between. "I need a room," you say. "Just a few nights." He nods, pulls out a ledger, dips a pen in an inkwell. "Name?" You give him the name you decided on, something period appropriate and forgettable. He writes it down in careful script. $1.50 a night, he says, in advance. You pull out 2 silver dollars and slide them across the desk. He takes them, tests each one between his teeth. You'd read about people doing this, but it's still strange to see it. And then nods, satisfied. He gives you change, 2 quarters that are heavy and substantial in your hand. He hands you a key attached to a wooden tag with a room number burned into it. 2nd floor, end of the hall. Breakfast is at 7 in the dining room if you want it. Extra charge. You thank him and climb the stairs. They creak under your weight. The hallway is dim, lit only by light coming through a window at the far end. The wallpaper is faded and water-stained in places. You can hear someone snoring behind one of the doors. Your room is small. A narrow bed with an iron frame and a thin mattress. A washstand with a pitcher and basin. 1 chair, a small table, a chamber pot under the bed. That's it. The walls are thin enough that you can hear movement from the next room, but it's clean enough, and the bed looks reasonably free of obvious vermin, and after a night on the hard ground this looks wonderful. You drop your bag on the floor, pour water from the pitcher into the basin, and wash your face and hands. The water is lukewarm and slightly gritty. You dry off with a rough towel that smells faintly of lye soap, and then you just sit on the bed for a moment, trying to process everything. You're here. You're actually in Dodge City in 1883. It worked, and now you need to figure out what to do with your time here. First priority, food. You haven't eaten since before the time jump, and you're hungry. You head back downstairs and follow the smell of cooking to the dining room. It's a modest space with 4 tables, half of them occupied by men eating breakfast. You sit down at an empty table, and a middle-aged woman in an apron comes over. "Morning," she says. "Breakfast is 4 bits, 50 cents. That gets you eggs, bacon or sausage, biscuits, potatoes, coffee. Sound good?" You nod and hand her 2 quarters. She disappears into what must be the kitchen, and you look around the room. The other diners are all men, all dressed in various versions of frontier clothing. One is clearly a businessman, suit and vest and pocket watch chain. 2 others look like working men, maybe railroad employees or shop clerks. One man sitting alone in the corner has the look of a professional gambler. Expensive clothes, pale skin like he doesn't see much sun, long, delicate fingers. He's reading a newspaper and ignoring everyone else. The woman returns with a plate of food and a cup of coffee. The portions are generous. 3 fried eggs, a pile of bacon that's crispy and dripping with grease, a mound of fried potatoes with onions, and 2 enormous biscuits. The coffee is black and strong enough to strip paint. You start eating. The eggs taste fresh, genuinely fresh, not like supermarket eggs that are weeks old. The bacon is salty and smoky and delicious, though it's got more gristle and fat than modern bacon. The potatoes are good, seasoned with what tastes like salt and black pepper, and maybe some dried herbs. The biscuits are heavy and dense, made with lard instead of butter, and they're best eaten soaked in bacon grease. Everything is cooked in animal fat. Everything is salty. Everything is heavy. This is food designed for men doing hard physical labour, men who need calories to survive days in the saddle, or working cattle or building railroads. It's not refined, but it's substantial, and it tastes better than you expected. The coffee is harsh and bitter, but it's hot and caffeinated, and you drink it gratefully. You notice other men dunking their biscuits in their coffee to soften them, and you try it. It works. By the time you finish eating, it's after 7 in the morning and the town is waking up. You can hear more activity outside, wagons rolling past, people calling to each other, the sounds of a town starting its day. You pay your respects to the cook, head outside and decide to explore. Front Street is busier now. Men are walking to work, opening shops, sweeping sidewalks. A freight wagon rumbles past, pulled by a team of 6 mules, the driver up on the seat calling out warnings to people to get out of the way. The dust the wagon kicks up hangs in the air like a fog. You walk west along Front Street, just observing. A hardware store is opening its doors, and you can see tools hanging on the walls inside. Saws, hammers, picks, shovels, all of them looking crude and heavy by modern standards. Next door is a feed and grain store with sacks of oats and corn stacked outside. The smell of grain is sweet and dusty. A group of Mexican men are standing outside a saloon, talking in rapid Spanish and gesturing. They're wearing range clothes, but with distinctive touches, wide-brimmed sombreros, leather chaps with more decoration than the Anglo cowboys wear, bright neckerchiefs. They glance at you as you pass, but don't stop their conversation. You see your first Chinese person, a man carrying 2 heavy buckets on a shoulder pole, walking quickly with a particular gait that keeps the buckets from swinging too much. He's wearing loose cotton clothing and a broad straw hat, and he's headed toward what you assume is Chinatown, the small Chinese enclave in Dodge City. Nobody stops him or speaks to him, and he doesn't acknowledge anyone. There's a kind of invisible barrier around him. He exists in the town, but not quite of it. A woman walks past with 2 children in tow. She's wearing a long brown dress with a high collar, a sunbonnet on her head, and she's carrying a basket. The children are maybe 6 and 8 years old, dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing. They're all walking quickly, purposefully, and the woman doesn't look at you or acknowledge your presence. Respectable women don't make eye contact with strange men. You wander into a general store just to see what it's like inside. The smells hit you immediately. Leather, tobacco, coffee, spices, soap, wood smoke, all mixed together. The store is packed with goods from floor to ceiling. Shelves line every wall, and there are barrels and crates scattered around the floor. You see bolts of fabric, canned goods with colourful labels, jars of penny candy, farming implements, rope and chain, lanterns, ammunition boxes, cigars and chewing tobacco, patent medicines with outrageous claims printed on the bottles. The shopkeeper, a heavy-set man with thinning hair and mutton chop sideburns, watches you from behind the counter. Help you find something. Just looking, you say. He nods, but his eyes follow you as you browse. You're aware that he's cataloguing you, trying to figure out if you're a paying customer or a potential thief. You pick up a can of peaches, examine the label, put it back. You look at the price list chalked on a board behind the counter. Flour is $3 for a 50-pound sack, coffee is 20 cents a pound, sugar is 10 cents a pound, bacon is 12 cents a pound. These prices mean nothing to you without context, but you file them away anyway. You buy a stick of peppermint candy for a nickel, mostly to establish yourself as a customer and not a vagrant. The shopkeeper relaxes slightly once money has changed hands. The candy is harder and less sweet than modern candy, flavoured with real peppermint oil, and it's actually quite good. Back outside, the heat is building. It's probably approaching 80 degrees by now, and it's not even 9 in the morning. The sun is relentless, hammering down from a sky that's turned from blue to a harsh white blue. You're grateful for your hat. Men without hats are squinting and sweating, and you see several people duck into shops just to escape the sun for a moment. You head south, across the railroad tracks again, toward the area that people call the South Side. This is where the rougher businesses are concentrated. Saloons, gambling dens, dance halls, brothels. During the day it looks run down but not particularly dangerous. Many of the buildings are in poor repair, with peeling paint and sagging porches. Some have women standing in doorways, wearing dresses that are brighter and more revealing than the respectable women in town wear. They call out to passing men, offering companionship for a price. You avoid eye contact and keep walking. A saloon door swings open and a man stumbles out, clearly drunk despite the early hour. He's dishevelled, his hat is missing, and he's got dried blood on his face from what looks like a nosebleed. He staggers a few steps, sits down heavily on the edge of the sidewalk and just stays there, staring at nothing. Nobody stops to help him. A couple of people glance at him as they pass, but that's all. This is apparently normal enough not to warrant intervention. You see a Chinese laundry, a small building with Chinese characters painted on the sign alongside English words, washing and ironing. Through the open door you can see steam, rising from big cauldrons and several Chinese men working, stirring the laundry with long poles. The heat inside must be unbearable, especially added to the already oppressive morning warmth. Near the laundry is a barber shop, and you decide to get a shave. You haven't shaved since before the time jump, and you're starting to feel scruffy. Plus, barbershops are great places to overhear conversation and get a feel for the local mood. Inside, the barbershop smells like bay rum and talcum powder and shaving soap. There are 2 barber chairs, both occupied at the moment, and you take a seat on a bench to wait. The barbers are working on their customers. One is giving a haircut, snipping away with scissors and using a hand-operated clipper that looks like it could also function as a torture device. The other is shaving a man's face with a straight razor, the blade glinting as he scrapes away whiskers. The conversation is mundane. Weather, too damn hot. The cattle market, prices are okay but not great. Town gossip, somebody's wife ran off with a whiskey drummer, can you believe it? One of the barbers is complaining about the railroad company raising freight rates. His customer is complaining about his rheumatism. When your turn comes, you sit in the chair and ask for just a shave. The barber, a thin man with spectacles and quick nervous movements, nods and gets to work. He reclines the chair, wraps your face in a hot towel that smells like lye and steam, leaves it there for a minute while he strops his razor. When he removes the towel, he lathers up your face with shaving soap that he whips into foam with a brush, and then he starts shaving you with long, practiced strokes. It's terrifying. The blade is sharp enough to split hair, and he's moving it across your throat and face with what seems like reckless speed. But he knows what he's doing, and the shave is remarkably close. He finishes by splashing your face with bay rum that stings like fire, and then powdering you with talcum that makes you sneeze. 2 bits, he says, and you hand him a quarter. Your face feels raw and smooth, and when you touch your cheek it's like touching someone else's skin. Outside again, the sun is even hotter. It must be 10 o'clock or close to it. The shadows are getting shorter, the light is getting harsher, and the temperature is climbing toward what will probably be the mid-90s by afternoon. You need to find some shade. You head toward the Arkansas River, walking south away from the commercial district into an area with scattered houses and outbuildings. The ground slopes down toward the river, and you can see the line of cottonwood trees that mark the watercourse. As you get closer, the vegetation gets thicker. Willows and shrubs and tall grass, all of it looking thirsty and dusty in the dry prairie heat. The river itself is disappointing. It's low, maybe only 2 or 3 feet deep in most places, flowing slowly over a sandy bottom. The water is brown and murky. You can see cattle on the far bank drinking and wading, and you remember what you read about the water quality, and you're glad you're not planning to drink from this river. But there's shade under the cottonwoods, and that's what you're looking for. You find a spot on the bank where the grass is relatively clean, and you can sit with your back against a tree trunk, and you just rest for a while, watching the river flow past and listening to the insects buzzing in the heat. A group of boys comes down to the river, maybe 10 or 11 years old, white and Mexican kids mixed together. They strip down to their underclothes and jump into the water, shrieking and splashing. Their laughter is pure and unself-conscious, and for a moment they could be kids from any era. But then you notice the rough homespun fabric of their clothing, the way their skin is already darkly tanned from constant sun exposure, the fact that at least 2 of them are thin enough that you can count their ribs. These are working-class kids, farm kids, or labourers' kids, and their childhood is probably harder than anything modern American children experience. They notice you watching, and one of them calls out, "Mister, you got a knife? We're trying to get a fish." You shake your head. "Sorry, boys, left it back at the hotel." They accept this and go back to their play, trying to catch fish with their bare hands in the shallow water. They won't succeed. You can see the fish darting away from their clumsy grabs, but they're having fun trying. You stay by the river for maybe an hour until the heat becomes too intense, even in the shade. Then you make your way back toward town, walking slowly to avoid overheating. Your shirt is soaked with sweat by the time you reach Front Street, and you're painfully thirsty. You duck into one of the saloons, not one of the rougher ones on the south side, but a more respectable establishment on Front Street called the Long Branch. The name is painted in gold letters on the window, and when you push through the swinging doors, the interior is dim and relatively cool after the glare outside. The saloon is maybe 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, with a long bar running down the right side. Behind the bar is a massive mirror in an ornate gilt frame, and shelves of bottles reflecting in it. The bar itself is polished wood, scarred and stained from years of use. There are brass fixtures, spittoons scattered around the floor, a brass rail along the bottom of the bar for customers to rest their feet on. The floor is covered in sawdust. Tables are scattered through the room, and about a dozen men are in here, some standing at the bar, others sitting at tables playing cards or just drinking. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of whiskey and beer and unwashed men. It's not pleasant, but it's tolerable. You step up to the bar, and the bartender, a big man with a handlebar moustache and rolled up shirt sleeves, comes over. "What'll you have?" "Beer," you say. He draws a beer from a keg behind the bar, slides it across to you. The glass is thick and slightly dirty, and the beer is warm. There's no refrigeration, obviously, so beer is served at room temperature. It tastes yeasty and slightly sour. Not like modern beer at all, but it's wet and it's drinkable, and it costs you a nickel. You take your beer to a table near the window where you can watch the street and still see most of the room. Nobody pays much attention to you. A couple of men glance over, assess you briefly, and go back to their conversations or their card games. You're dressed like a respectable visitor, you're not causing trouble, and that's all that matters. The conversations around you are a mix of business and gossip. 2 men at the next table are discussing cattle prices, debating whether it's better to sell now or wait and risk the market dropping. At the bar, several cowboys are talking loudly about a horse race that happened yesterday, arguing about whether one of the horses was drugged. In the corner, a poker game is in progress, the players focused and silent except for the occasional murmur of betting. The bartender is cleaning glasses with a rag that doesn't look particularly clean, then setting them back on the shelf. The free lunch spread is on the bar, a few plates with sliced bread, some hard cheese, crackers, and a jar of pickled eggs. It looks unappetizing, but you see men helping themselves to it throughout your time there. You nurse your beer slowly, trying to make it last. It's warm, and the taste doesn't improve, but it's something to do while you sit and observe. A man comes in, staggers slightly, already drunk or getting there, and orders whiskey. The bartender pours him a shot without comment, takes his money, and the man downs it in one gulp, grimaces, and orders another. This continues for 3 more shots before the man wanders back out into the sunlight. Around noon, the saloon starts to fill up a bit more. Men coming in for lunch and a drink, taking a break from whatever work they're doing. The noise level increases. Somebody at one of the card tables accuses someone else of cheating, and there's a tense moment where you think it might turn violent, but the other players intervene, calm things down, and the game continues. The accuser leaves in a huff, but nobody follows him. You decide to get some actual food. You leave the Long Branch and walk down to a restaurant you noticed earlier, not Delmonico's, which looks expensive, but a smaller place with a hand-painted sign reading Annie's Cafe. Inside, it's cramped and hot. A kitchen in back is radiating heat through the whole space. But there are a few tables with checkered cloths, and a tired-looking woman takes your order. We got beef stew, fried chicken or pork chops today. All come with beans, potatoes and cornbread. 25 cents. You order the beef stew. It arrives. In a thick ceramic bowl, steaming hot despite the ambient temperature. The stew is simple. Chunks of tough beef, potatoes, carrots, onions, all in a thin brown gravy that tastes like it's mostly beef drippings and flour. The beans are pinto beans, cooked soft with some salt pork. The potatoes are boiled and mashed with more salt pork fat. The cornbread is dense and crumbly, made with more cornmeal than wheat flour, and it's best eaten dunked in the stew. It's not sophisticated food, but it's filling and it's edible. The beef is chewy, probably from an old steer that worked pulling wagons or ploughing before it was slaughtered, but the flavour is good. The vegetables are overcooked by modern standards, but that's how people cooked in this era, and it's what everyone expects. You finish your meal, pay your quarter, and head back out into the afternoon heat. It's after 1 o'clock now, and the temperature has to be in the mid-90s. The street is less busy. People are staying inside when they can, avoiding the worst of the heat. Dogs lie in patches of shade, panting. A few horses stand at hitching rails, heads down, tails swishing at flies. You explore more of the town, walking through the residential areas. The houses are mostly small, 1 or 2 rooms made of wood frame construction with clappered siding. Some have been whitewashed, but most are bare weathered wood. The windows are small, sometimes with glass, sometimes with just shutters. There's no landscaping to speak of, maybe a few scraggly bushes or a vegetable garden in back, but mostly just bare dirt yards. Behind many of the houses are outhouses, small sheds set back from the main dwelling, and the smell confirms what they are. The lack of modern sanitation is one of the hardest things to adjust to. Every town in this era smells like human waste, especially in the heat, because there's nowhere else for it to go. You see women working in their yards, hanging laundry on lines to dry, tending gardens, carrying water from wells or the river. They're all wearing those long dresses despite the heat, and you can't imagine how uncomfortable that must be. One woman is using a washboard and tub to scrub clothes, and the physical effort looks exhausting. She's bent over the tub, arms moving rhythmically, sweat streaming down her face, and you realise that doing laundry in this era is a full day's hard labour, not a matter of tossing things in a machine. A few children are playing in the streets, boys mostly, since girls are expected to help with household chores. They're playing a game that looks like a version of tag, chasing each other and laughing. One boy has a hoop that he rolls with a stick, running alongside it to keep it upright. It's a simple toy, but he's clearly delighted with it. You make your way to the railroad depot, curious to see it. The depot is a wooden building beside the tracks, with a platform where passengers can board trains. There's a telegraph office. Inside, you can see the operator at his desk tapping out messages in Morse code on his key. The clicking sound is rapid and precise, and you watch him for a moment, fascinated by this example of 1880s high technology. A freight train is sitting on the siding being loaded with cattle. The cattle cars are simple wooden boxcars with slatted sides for ventilation. Cowboys are driving steers up a chute into the cars, and the animals are resisting, bellowing and trying to turn back. Men shout and wave their arms, and occasionally someone smacks a steer with a stick to keep it moving. It's loud and chaotic and smells terrible. The cattle are scared and stressed, and they're defecating everywhere. You watch the loading process for about 20 minutes. It's brutally hard work. The men are covered in sweat and dust, and several of them look like they've been kicked or stepped on. They're limping or holding their ribs. Once a car is full, they slide the door shut and bar it, and move on to the next car. A full train might hold 1,000 head of cattle or more, all of them being shipped east to Kansas City or Chicago to be slaughtered. It's mid-afternoon now, and you decide you want to see something more interesting than the industrial side of Dodge City. You've heard about Boot Hill, the town cemetery, and you head in that direction. Boot Hill is on a rise north of town, maybe a quarter-mile walk from Front Street. The cemetery is not what you expected. There's no fence, no gate, no obvious boundaries. It's just a patch of prairie with scattered wooden markers and a few stone headstones. Many of the markers are crude, just boards with names carved or painted on them, and many of those have weathered to the point of being unreadable. Some graves have wilted flowers or personal items left on them. Others show no sign of being tended at all. You walk among the graves, reading the markers that are still legible. George Hoy died 1878. Texas Tommy 1880. Molly Brennan, beloved wife, 1878. Some markers just say unknown or cowboy. A few graves are marked with just a pile of rocks. The death dates are what strike you. So many young people, men in their 20s and 30s, a few women who died in childbirth, several children, baby Sarah 3 months 1881, and Johnny, age 6, 1879. The infant mortality rate was horrific in this era, and seeing the physical evidence of it is sobering. Some of the markers indicate how people died. Shot in a gambling dispute. Fever. Killed by Cheyenne, 1867. The violence is matter-of-fact, recorded without commentary or judgment. The view from Boot Hill is expansive. You can see the whole town laid out below, the railroad tracks cutting through the middle, the Arkansas River beyond, and the prairie stretching to the horizon in every direction. It's beautiful and harsh and lonely, and you understand better why people would risk everything to come here. The openness, the possibility, the sense that the land goes on forever and anything might be possible. But you also see the cost. These graves are the cost. All these people who came west seeking something, fortune, adventure, a fresh start, and found death instead. The frontier took them, and now they're buried here in unmarked or barely marked graves, mostly forgotten. You stay at Boot Hill for perhaps half an hour, walking among the graves and thinking about mortality and risk and what people will do for the chance at a better life. Then you head back down toward town and you notice that the energy on the streets is changing. It's late afternoon now, maybe 5 o'clock, and the worst of the heat is starting to break. The sun is lower in the sky, the light is more golden and less harsh, and people are venturing out again. Shops that had closed during the peak heat are reopening. The saloons are starting to fill up as men finish work and head in for a drink, and cowboys are arriving. You see them coming in groups, riding in from the south on dusty, tired horses. These are men who've been on the trail for weeks or months, driving cattle up from Texas, and they've finally reached Dodge City. They're dirty, bearded, sunburned, and they look exhausted. But there's also an energy to them, an excitement, because this is their reward. A few days or weeks in town, money in their pockets, and every vice and entertainment available. They head first to the hotels or rooming houses to secure lodging, or to the stables to board their horses. Then many of them head to bathhouses or barbershops to clean up. You watch groups of them walking down the street, talking loudly, laughing, clearly unwinding after the tension and monotony of the cattle drive. By 6 o'clock, the saloons on the south side are starting to get busy. Music begins. Tinny piano music coming from several establishments competing with each other. The distinctive sound of glass breaking followed by shouts and laughter. You decide this is the time to venture down to the south side and see what the famous Dodge City nightlife is actually like. You head south across the tracks into what locals call the Devil's Addition. This is the concentrated area of saloons, dance halls, gambling establishments, and brothels that give Dodge City its reputation. The buildings are rougher than those on Front Street. Unpainted wood, sagging porches, hand-painted signs advertising girls and dancing and games of chance. The smell is different here too, more concentrated, more organic, more human. Cheap perfume mixing with tobacco smoke, mixing with whiskey spills, mixing with body odour, mixing with sewage. The wooden sidewalks are stained with tobacco juice where men have been spitting, and the street itself is churned mud and manure despite the dry weather. The first place you pass is a dance hall. The front doors are open, and you can see inside, a wooden floor with maybe 20 people dancing to a piano and a fiddle. The dancers are cowboys and working-class men paired with women in bright dresses. The women are dance hall girls, paid to dance with customers. They're not necessarily prostitutes, though some might be, but their job is to dance with any man who pays, to encourage him to buy drinks, and to keep the party going. The dancing is energetic and not particularly skillful, lots of stomping and swinging and whooping. Everyone looks like they're having fun, though the women's smiles seem professional rather than genuine. Next door is a gambling hall, bigger than the saloons you saw earlier, with multiple poker tables, a faro table, and what looks like a roulette wheel. The room is packed with men, and the noise is intense, shouting, laughing, cursing, the rattle of chips, the slap of cards on felt. Cigar and cigarette smoke hangs in the air like a physical presence. You step inside just to see. The gamblers range from working cowboys trying their luck to obvious professionals. The professionals are easy to spot. Better clothes, steady hands, expressionless faces. They're the ones who make their living at this, travelling from town to town following the money. The cowboys are their prey, and you watch one professional systematically separate a young cowboy from what looks like 2 months' wages over the course of about 15 minutes. The cowboy keeps betting, convinced his luck will turn, but the professional's pile of chips keeps growing. The house takes a percentage of every pot, which is how the gambling halls make money whether the players win or lose. The dealers and the house gamblers work together, subtly directing the flow of money toward themselves. It's not exactly cheating, the games are mostly honest, but the whole system is designed to extract money from drunk, tired men who don't know when to stop. You watch for a while, nursing a nickel beer that tastes even worse than the beer at the Long Branch. A fight nearly breaks out at one of the poker tables, a man accusing another of palming cards. But one of the house employees, a big man who's clearly there to keep order, steps in and convinces both men to settle down. The game continues. You leave the gambling hall and wander further into the south side. A woman in a bright red dress calls out to you from a doorway. "Come on in, honey. I'll show you a good time." You shake your head and keep walking, and she laughs and turns her attention to the next man passing by. Another building has a sign reading "The Lady Gay," and advertises itself as Dodge City's finest entertainment. You can hear music and raucous laughter from inside. You push through the door and find yourself in a combination saloon and variety theatre. There's a stage at one end where 2 women are performing, singing, rather badly, some popular song you don't recognise. The audience of maybe 30 men is paying sporadic attention, more interested in drinking and talking than in the performance. When the song ends, the women bow, and a few men clap or whistle, and then the women step down and start working the room, encouraging men to buy them drinks. The whole economy of these places is based on alcohol. The entertainment is just an excuse to get men in the door and keep them drinking. The more drinks you buy, the more attention you get from the women, and the more money the establishment makes. It's a system that's been perfected over years of operation, and it works because lonely, bored, drunk men will spend money for female attention, even when that attention is transparently transactional. You buy another beer, still a nickel, and find a spot along the wall where you can observe without being in the way. A new act takes the stage. A man who performs magic tricks, pulling coins from behind people's ears, making a handkerchief disappear and reappear. The tricks are simple and obvious to modern eyes, but the audience enjoys them. When he finishes, he works the room too, performing up-close magic for small groups in exchange for drinks. The sun is setting now, and you can see the light through the open door changing from golden to deep orange to purple. The interior of the saloon gets darker, and bartenders start lighting kerosene lamps. The lamps give off a warm yellow light that's nothing like electric lighting. It's dimmer, softer, and it flickers constantly. The shadows are deeper, and the corners of the room never get truly bright. More cowboys are pouring in now, freshly cleaned and ready to blow their trail wages. The noise level increases. The piano player switches to faster, livelier songs. The dancehall girl, now acting as hostess, moves through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting regulars, encouraging new arrivals, subtly directing business toward the bar. You see a table of men playing poker get into an argument. It starts with raised voices, escalates to standing up and pushing, and then suddenly one man throws a punch. His fist connects with the other man's jaw with a solid, meaty thunk that you hear even over the general noise. The struck man staggers back, blood pouring from his split lip, and then he lunges forward and tackles his attacker. They go down in a tangle, rolling on the floor, throwing wild punches. Everyone else scatters away from the fight, but nobody intervenes. The house enforcer is watching, but not moving. Apparently he judges this as not serious enough to require action. The 2 men roll around for maybe 20 seconds, neither one gaining a clear advantage, and then they break apart by mutual exhaustion, both panting and bleeding. They're pulled to their feet by their respective friends, glare at each other, and then the loser is escorted out of the saloon. The winner stays, his friends congratulating him and buying him drinks. The whole incident takes maybe 2 minutes from start to finish, and then everything goes back to normal like it never happened. The bartender doesn't even seem concerned. This must happen multiple times a night. You're starting to understand the reputation of Dodge City. The violence isn't constant. It's not like there are gunfights in the street every minute, but it's always simmering just below the surface. Arguments can turn physical instantly. Alcohol lowers inhibitions. Honor culture means men feel they have to respond to insults with violence. And the sheer concentration of young men with money and no responsibilities means there's always somebody looking for trouble. You decide to get out of the Lady Gay before something worse happens. Outside, the street is now fully alive. All the saloons and dance halls are going at full volume, music and shouting and breaking glass creating a cacophony. Men are staggering between establishments already drunk. A woman screams, not in fear, you realise after a moment, but in laughter. A group of cowboys are singing as they walk, a bawdy song about a girl in Abilene. The smell is worse now too. In addition to everything else, men are urinating in the alleys and sometimes just in the street. There's no public restrooms, so you do your business wherever you happen to be when nature calls. Combined with the horse and cattle waste everywhere, the south side smells like an open sewer. You watch a drunk cowboy try to mount his horse and fail 3 times before his friends help him. They get him on the horse backwards at first, all of them laughing hysterically at the mistake, and then they turn him around and slap the horse's rump. The horse trots off with the cowboy clinging desperately to the saddle horn, and his friends cheer. It's nearly dark now, that deep purple twilight just before full night. The stars are starting to appear, and you remember how spectacular they were last night. But here in town, even the few kerosene lamps in the windows and hanging over saloon doors create enough light to wash out the fainter stars. Not like modern light pollution, but enough to make a difference. You're about to head back to your hotel when you hear a different sound. The sharp crack of gunfire. 3 shots in rapid succession, coming from somewhere to the west. Everyone on the street freezes for a second, listening, trying to determine if it's a threat or just someone shooting at the sky for fun. Then people relax and go back to what they were doing. Apparently random gunfire is common enough not to warrant investigation. But then there's shouting, and 2 men come running down the street, one of them holding his arm and blood dripping through his fingers. "He shot me! That son of a bitch shot me!" His friend is supporting him, and they're headed toward what must be a doctor's office, or the hotel where a doctor might be found. This attracts more attention. Men pour out of the saloons to see what's happening. Someone asks what happened, and the story comes out in fragments. Argument over a card game, accusations of cheating. Both men drew guns, one was faster. The shooter hasn't appeared yet, probably fled the scene or is holed up somewhere. Within minutes, the town marshal and a deputy arrive, walking quickly but not running. The marshal is a stocky man with a thick moustache, wearing a vest and a wide-brimmed hat, with a gun belt and badge visible. He questions the wounded man and witnesses, getting the story. He sends the deputy to find the shooter. The whole process is calm and methodical. This is clearly routine for him. The wounded man is taken to a doctor. The crowd disperses, already losing interest. The marshal continues his investigation, knocking on doors and asking questions. You overhear someone say the wound isn't life-threatening, just a through and through in the meat of the upper arm. The man will be fine in a few weeks. This is frontier justice in action. Someone got shot, but probably nobody will hang for it. If they can prove self-defense, or if witnesses disagree about who drew first, the shooter might walk free, or he might leave town before the marshal finds him, or the marshal might find him and throw him in jail to await trial, and then a jury of local men will decide his fate. The system is inconsistent and often depends more on personal connections and local politics than on actual justice. You've seen enough of the South Side for one night. You head back north across the tracks to the more respectable part of town, and the contrast is stark. Front Street is quieter, fewer people, less chaos. There are still saloons open, but they're patronised by middle-class men and merchants, not rowdy cowboys. The noise level is lower, the smell is marginally better. You return to your hotel as full darkness settles over the town. The clerk at the desk nods to you as you pass, and you climb the stairs to your room. Inside, you light the kerosene lamp on the table. It takes you 2 tries to get the wick properly adjusted, and the room fills with soft yellow light. You're exhausted. The heat, the walking, the sensory overload of experiencing a completely different world. It's all catching up to you. You pour water from the pitcher into the basin and wash your face and hands. The water is still gritty, and you wonder what exactly is in it that makes it feel that way. You sit on the edge of the bed and pull off your boots. Your feet hurt. The boots are broken in, but they're not modern boots with cushioned insoles and arch support, and after a full day of walking on hard dirt streets, your feet are letting you know about it. You lie down on the bed, still fully clothed except for your boots. The mattress is thin and lumpy, and you can feel the rope supports underneath giving slightly with your weight. The pillow is stuffed with something that might be feathers or might be straw, you can't tell which, and it's flat and not particularly comfortable. But after sleeping on the ground last night, this feels luxurious. Through the thin walls, you can hear the sounds of the hotel and the town. Someone in the next room is snoring. Downstairs in the lobby or dining room, men are talking, their voices rising and falling. Outside, the sounds of Dodge City at night continue. Distant music from the south side, occasional shouts, the clop of horse hooves on the street, the rattle of a wagon passing by. You think about just going to sleep, but you're not quite ready. There's still more to see, and you may never have this opportunity again. You pull your boots back on, take your key, and head back downstairs. The hotel clerk looks up as you pass. Heading back out? Just for a walk, you say. He nods. Be careful down on the south side. Gets rough late at night. You thank him for the warning and step out onto Front Street. It's fully dark now, and the change is profound. The town is not lit like a modern city with streetlights on every corner. There are kerosene lamps in some windows, lanterns hanging outside a few saloons, and that's it. Most of the street is in darkness, illuminated only by starlight and whatever moonlight there is. You check the sky and see a waning crescent moon. Not much illumination there. The darkness is thick and real in a way that modern people never experience. There are pools of yellow light around the lamps and everything else is shadows. You can't see clearly more than 20 or 30 feet away. People appear out of the darkness suddenly, their faces illuminated for a moment as they pass a lamp, then disappearing back into shadow. It's disorienting and slightly threatening. The stars, though. Even with the scattered lamplight in town, the stars are magnificent. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a river of light. You can see individual stars by the thousands, and constellations stand out with a clarity that's impossible in the 21st century. The Big Dipper is so bright it almost looks artificial. Orion dominates one section of sky with Betelgeuse glowing red and Rigel glowing blue-white. You could navigate by these stars, and people do. You walk east along Front Street, away from the main commercial district, into an area where the buildings are more residential. The darkness deepens. There are almost no lamps here. Residents are either asleep or conserving lamp oil. You can hear dogs barking, and once you hear what might be a cat fighting with something in an alley. The smell of privies is stronger at night, maybe because the cooler air isn't carrying the smell away as effectively. A man appears out of the darkness, walking toward you. You tense instinctively, your hand moving toward the pocket where you've got a small folding knife. But he passes without incident, not even acknowledging your presence. Just another person walking through the night. You turn south and head back toward the area near the railroad tracks. The cattle pens are dark and mostly quiet, though you can hear some movement and occasional lowing from the animals. The smell is overwhelming even at night. Thousands of cattle have passed through these pens, and the accumulated waste is ankle-deep in places. You give the pens a wide berth. South of the tracks, the south side is still going strong. The saloons and dance halls are lit up, music pouring out into the night, and the street is full of people despite the late hour. This is when Dodge City really lives up to its reputation. After dark, when inhibitions are lowest and alcohol consumption is highest. When the respectable people are home and the rougher element has free rein. You watch from a distance, not quite ready to dive back into that chaos. From where you stand, maybe 50 yards away, you can see figures moving in and out of the pools of light, hear the raised voices and laughter and breaking glass, see the occasional fight spilling out into the street. A woman screams again, and this time you're not sure if it's laughter or genuine distress. Nobody seems concerned either way. A group of 5 or 6 cowboys comes riding down the street, whooping and firing pistols into the air. The gunshots are shockingly loud, sharp cracks that echo off the buildings. The horses are running, and the cowboys are barely controlling them, swaying in their saddles. They disappear into the darkness to the west, still shooting and shouting. Someone yells after them, cursing, but they're already gone. This is the Wild West in its raw form. Not a movie, not a theme park, but an actual functioning, barely functioning society where violence is casual, where the law is inconsistent, where men make their own rules and enforce them with guns and fists. It's exciting in a visceral way, but it's also genuinely dangerous. You understand now why the historian's advice emphasised being careful, travelling in groups, not standing out. One wrong move down here, one misunderstood gesture or comment, could get you hurt or killed, and there might be no meaningful consequences for the person who hurt you. You decide to walk along the edge of the south side rather than through it. You want to observe, but you don't want to become part of the chaos. You walk slowly, staying in the shadows when possible, watching the saloons and dance halls from a distance. Through the open door of one saloon, you see a faro game in progress. Faro was hugely popular in the Old West, more popular than poker in many places, and you've read about it but never seen it played. The layout is on a table, with cards arranged in a specific pattern, and players are placing bets on which cards will be drawn. The dealer is using a dealing box, slowly pulling cards from the deck, and players are winning or losing based on complicated rules you don't fully understand. The whole game is run by the house, and the house has a built-in edge, but players don't seem to care. Money changes hands rapidly. Next door, through another open door, you glimpse the interior of what must be a brothel. It's more luxurious than the saloons. You can see wallpaper, actual, curtains on the windows, upholstered furniture. Several women in elaborate dresses are sitting in a parlour, and a madam of some kind is talking to a prospective customer. You catch only a glimpse before someone closes the door, but it's enough to see that the sex trade in Dodge City operates relatively openly, at least in this part of town. You hear singing and follow the sound to a dance hall where someone with a surprisingly good voice is performing. You stop outside the door to listen. It's a sad song about a cowboy who died on the trail, and the singer is giving it genuine emotion. The audience is actually quiet, listening, and for a moment the whole rough atmosphere of the South Side softens into something almost civilized. Then the song ends, the mood breaks, and the rowdiness resumes. A drunk man stumbles out of a saloon and vomits on the sidewalk, barely missing your boots. He wipes his mouth with his sleeve, looks at you with unfocused eyes, mumbles an apology or maybe a curse, you can't tell which, and stumbles back inside. The smell of vomit adds to the already complex bouquet of scents in this area. You're about to move on when you hear raised voices from inside the saloon the drunk man just left. The voices get louder, more aggressive, and then suddenly 3 men come crashing through the door, fighting. They're locked together, throwing punches, kicking, biting. They fall off the sidewalk into the street, rolling in the dirt and horse manure, still swinging at each other. A crowd forms immediately. Men pour out of the saloon to watch, shouting encouragement to one fighter or another. Money changes hands. They're betting on the outcome. Nobody intervenes to stop the fight. This is entertainment. The fight is brutal and messy. None of the men are skilled fighters. They're just brawling, using raw strength and rage. One man gets on top and starts pounding the other's face with his fists. Blood sprays, visible even in the dim lamplight. The third man, who'd been fighting both of them initially, backs off and staggers away, apparently giving up. The remaining 2 continue until one of them goes limp, either unconscious or too hurt to continue. The winner stands up, swaying, his face a mask of blood and dirt. His friends cheer. Someone hands him a bottle and he drinks from it, then spits blood and liquor. The loser just lies there in the street, groaning. Eventually 2 men drag him to the side of the road and leave him there. The crowd disperses. The whole thing took maybe 5 minutes. You keep walking, disturbed by what you've seen, but also grimly fascinated. This is human nature stripped of modern constraints. No police showing up within minutes, no fear of lawsuits, no social media recording and shaming. Just men settling disputes with violence because that's the tool they have available. The eastern sky is showing the faintest hint of light. Not dawn yet, but pre-dawn. That subtle change that tells you the night is ending. You check your pocket watch. It's nearly 4 in the morning. You've been out all night, and exhaustion is catching up with you again. But you're not ready to sleep yet. You want to see the transition from night to day, want to experience how this town wakes up. You find a spot on the wooden sidewalk outside a closed shop, sit down with your back against the wall, and wait. The south side is finally quieting down. The music from the saloons is more sporadic now. The crowds have thinned. Most people have either gone home or passed out somewhere. The ones still moving seem to be the most dedicated drinkers, the professional gamblers who operate all night, and the women who work the saloons and brothels. You see several women leaving their establishments, walking quickly through the dark streets toward wherever they live. They're dressed in normal clothing now, not the bright dresses they wore for work, and they look tired and guarded. The temperature has dropped significantly. It's actually cold now, maybe in the low 50s. You pull your vest tighter and wish you'd brought a coat. The wind is steady from the southwest, carrying the smell of the prairie, grass and dust and space. More stars are disappearing now as the eastern sky continues to lighten. The quality of darkness is changing from black to dark blue to a pale greyish blue. You can start to see the shapes of buildings more clearly, the outline of the landscape. A rooster crows from somewhere in the residential area. Then another answers it. Then another. A chain reaction of roosters announcing the coming dawn. It's a sound that's been greeting morning for thousands of years, and it's somehow comforting in its familiarity. The first person you see moving with purpose is a Chinese man carrying those shoulder pole buckets again. He's walking quickly, heading toward the river, probably fetching water for his laundry business. He doesn't look at you or acknowledge your presence. He's just doing his work, same as he does every morning. Then a delivery wagon comes down the street, pulled by two mules. The driver's half asleep on the seat, letting the mules find their own way. They probably make this delivery every morning at the same time, and they know the route without guidance. The wagon is loaded with barrels, probably beer or whiskey for the saloons, and it creaks and rattles as it passes. Smoke starts rising from more chimneys as people wake up and restart their fires. The smell of wood smoke begins to dominate the morning air, temporarily masking some of the less pleasant odours. It's a clean smell, almost comforting, and you associate it now with the beginning of the day in this era. A man in a white apron emerges from a bakery. You hadn't even realised it was a bakery in the darkness, and props the door open. Warm air rolls out, carrying the smell of baking bread. Your stomach growls. You realise you haven't eaten since that afternoon meal at Annie's cafe, and you're suddenly ravenous. You stand up, stiff from sitting on the hardwood, and stretch. Your back aches, your feet hurt, and you probably smell terrible. You haven't bathed in 2 days now, and you've been sweating in the heat and walking through dust and exposed to all the various smells of Dodge City. But you feel alive in a way that's hard to describe. Every sense is engaged, every moment is novel, and you're experiencing something that no modern person gets to experience. A pre-industrial world in its raw, unfiltered reality. The sky is definitely light now, though the sun hasn't broken the horizon yet. The world is that peculiar grey-blue colour of early dawn, where you can see clearly but colours are still muted. The stars are gone except for a few of the brightest ones. Venus is visible in the east, brilliant and steady. More people are appearing on the streets now, working men heading to their jobs, shop owners opening their establishments, a milk seller with a cart and large milk cans, ladling out milk for customers. The town is waking up. You walk toward the bakery, drawn by that bread smell. Inside, the baker is pulling loaves from a large brick oven, using a long wooden paddle. The loaves are dark-crusted and substantial, and the baker is sweating from the heat of the oven despite the cool morning air. "Help you?" he asks, not pausing in his work. "Just a loaf of bread," you say. He nods toward a shelf where several loaves are cooling. 10 cents. You pick up a loaf. It's still warm, almost hot, and heavy in your hands, and give him a dime. The bread has a thick, crunchy crust, and when you break it open, steam escapes. The interior is dense and yeasty, a bit sour, nothing like modern sandwich bread. You tear off a piece and eat it as you walk. It's delicious, simple but so fresh that it transcends its simplicity. You wander back toward the river, eating your bread and watching the town come to life. The sun breaks the horizon, and suddenly everything is gold. The low angle of morning light makes every surface glow, turns the dust in the air into floating golden particles, creates long, dramatic shadows. The temperature starts to climb immediately. You can feel the sun's heat on your face even though it's barely up. By the river, you find a flat rock where you can sit and watch the water flow past while you finish your bread. The river is low and lazy, but it's moving, and there's something hypnotic about watching water flow. A heron stands in the shallows, motionless, waiting for fish. It's so still it could be a statue, but then it strikes with shocking speed, spearing a small fish and swallowing it whole. Cattle are being driven to the river to drink. You can hear them before you see them, the bellowing and the shouts of the drovers. Then they appear, maybe 200 head, moving in a loose group toward the water. The drovers are on horseback, calling to each other, keeping the herd moving but not pushing too hard. The cattle wade into the river, drinking deeply, and the drovers dismount and let their horses drink too. You watch this scene for maybe 20 minutes. It's peaceful despite the noise. A timeless moment of animals and humans working together. The prairie dawn, the river, the wide sky. This is the West without the violence and chaos, just the practical business of moving cattle and keeping them alive. One of the drovers notices you and nods. You nod back. He's young, maybe 20, with a sun-darkened face and the lean build of someone who doesn't get enough to eat. He's wearing the standard working cowboy gear, worn clothes, a battered hat, a bandana around his neck darkened with accumulated sweat and dust. "Fine morning," he calls out. "It is," you agree. "You from around here?" "Just passing through," you say, which is true in a larger sense than he knows. He nods, accepting this, and goes back to watching his cattle. No more questions. In this era, people come and go constantly, and there's no need to explain yourself as long as you're not causing trouble. The cattle drink their fill, and the drovers start moving them back toward the holding pens. You stay by the river a while longer, watching the sun climb and feeling the air warm. The morning coolness is already gone, burned away by the strengthening sun, and you know that within a few hours the heat will be oppressive again. You head back to town, walking through streets that are now busy with morning activity. Wagons rolling past, carrying goods and materials. Men walking to work. Women with shopping baskets heading toward the market. Children running errands or playing. The town has transformed from the dark, threatening place of last night into something almost normal, almost civilized. You pass the Long Branch Saloon. It's closed now, doors shut, and you can imagine the mess inside from last night's business. Someone will have to clean all that up before it opens again this evening. You pass the marshal's office and see the marshal himself sitting on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the street. He's still wearing the same clothes from last night, which suggests he worked all night dealing with the various incidents that occurred. You see a Chinese laundry worker hanging freshly washed shirts on a line to dry. The shirts are white or light-coloured, and they glow in the morning sun. By afternoon they'll be dry and ready to be picked up by their owners. The laundryman works methodically, efficient, not wasting movements. He's done this thousands of times. A freight wagon pulled by 6 mules comes lumbering down Front Street, loaded so heavily that the wagon bed sags. The driver's cracking a whip over the mules' heads, not hitting them but making noise to keep them moving. The sound of the whip crack echoes off the buildings, sharp and startling like a gunshot. You're getting tired now, genuinely tired. The adrenaline that kept you going through the night is fading, and your body is demanding rest. You head back to the Dodge house, nodding to the same clerk who's apparently been on duty all night, or has just come on for the day shift. You can't tell which. Back in your room, you pull off your boots again, lie down on the bed, and close your eyes. The sounds of the town continue outside. The familiar cacophony of voices and horses and wheels and hammering and shouting, but you're too tired to care. Within minutes, you're asleep. You wake up disoriented, not sure where you are or what time it is. The light coming through the window is bright and harsh. Afternoon light, you realise. You've slept through most of the day. Your mouth is dry, your body aches, and you're covered in dried sweat and dust. You check your pocket watch. It's nearly 3 in the afternoon. You've slept for almost 7 hours, and you needed every minute of it. You pour water into the basin and wash again, trying to feel more human. The water doesn't really clean you. You need a proper bath, which you can get at one of the bathhouses in town, but it helps a bit. Your clothes are filthy. 2 days of constant wear, sweating in the heat, sitting in the dust, walking through the streets of Dodge City with all their various contaminants. The clothes are beyond what a simple washing could fix. You change into your spare outfit, which isn't much cleaner but at least doesn't smell as bad. You head downstairs and out into the afternoon heat. It's brutally hot again, probably in the mid-90s, and the sun is overwhelming. You need to find shade, and you need to find food. You eat at the same restaurant as before, Annie's Cafe, ordering beef stew again because you know it's good. While you eat, you listen to the conversations around you. A couple of men are discussing the cattle market again. Apparently prices have dropped, and there's concern about whether the ranchers will make their money back after paying the costs of the drive. Another table is talking about politics. There's an election coming up, local offices, and there's some scandal involving one of the candidates and a woman who isn't his wife. The food is just as heavy and greasy as before, but your body craves the calories. You clean your plate, pay your quarter, and head back out into the oppressive afternoon. You spend the rest of the afternoon wandering through different parts of town that you haven't explored yet. You find the Chinese Quarter, a cluster of small businesses and residences where most of Dodge City's Chinese population lives. There's the laundry you saw before, a restaurant with Chinese characters on the sign and strange but interesting smells coming from the kitchen, a small store selling imported goods from Asia. The atmosphere here is different, quieter, more closed off. The Chinese residents have learned to keep to themselves to avoid drawing attention because they face constant discrimination and occasional violence from white residents. You walk through the Mexican section of town too, where many of the vaqueros and Mexican labourers live. The architecture is slightly different here. Some of the buildings have adobe construction rather than wood frame, and there are more vibrant colours, more decorations. You hear Spanish conversations, smell cooking that's different from the Anglo food, chilies and cumin and corn tortillas. You buy tamales from a street vendor, an older Mexican woman with a cart, keeping the tamales warm in a covered pot. She doesn't speak much English, and you don't speak Spanish, so the transaction happens through gestures and smiles. The tamales are wrapped in corn husks still hot, and you unwrap one carefully. Inside is masa filled with shredded pork and red chili sauce. It's spicy and rich and absolutely delicious. Better than any Mexican food you've had in the 21st century. You eat 3 of them, standing in the street, and the woman smiles at you with genuine warmth when you come back for the 3rd. As evening approaches, you find yourself drawn back toward the south side, wanting to see the nightlife one more time before you leave. But you also know you need to be careful. You've been lucky so far, no serious trouble, no dangerous encounters, and you don't want to push your luck on your last night. The south side is starting to wake up again as the sun sets. The saloons are opening their doors, piano music is beginning, the dance hall girls are arriving for work. You watch from a distance as the transformation happens, the rough, dangerous area of daytime becoming the rough, dangerous entertainment district of nighttime. You decide to try a different saloon this time, one called the Saratoga. It's supposed to be one of the better establishments, with higher class clientele and professional gamblers. You push through the doors and find yourself in a large, well-appointed room. The bar is polished mahogany with an elaborate mirror behind it. The floor is clean, or cleaner than the other saloons you've visited. There are actual paintings on the walls, though they're of questionable artistic merit, mostly pictures of nude or semi-nude women in classical poses. The clientele is different too, more suits and fewer cowboys, more professional gamblers and fewer drovers. The conversations are quieter, more controlled. This is where the money players come, men who gamble seriously, not just cowboys blowing their wages. You order a whiskey, which costs you 15 cents instead of the usual nickel. But when it's poured, you can see it's better quality. It's been filtered or aged or something, because it's not the rock gut you've tasted in other places. It's still harsh by modern standards, but it doesn't taste like it was made in a bathtub yesterday. You find a spot where you can observe a poker game. The stakes are higher here. You see gold coins on the table, not just silver. The players are serious and silent, their faces giving nothing away. The dealer is professional, his movements smooth and practiced. This is poker as a skill game, not just drunken gambling. You watch for perhaps half an hour, trying to understand the strategies, the tells, the flow of betting. One player in particular seems to be winning consistently. A thin man in a black suit with delicate hands and an expressionless face. He's reading the other players somehow, knowing when to push and when to fold, and his pile of coins steadily grows while the others shrink. Eventually one of the other players runs out of money and leaves the game. The professional gambler gathers his winnings without celebration or comment, and the remaining players reset for another hand. You realise you're watching someone make their living, someone who travels from town to town following the cattle drives and the railroad construction and anywhere else money concentrates, and they systematically extract that money through superior skill at cards. The evening deepens. Outside, the street fills with people. The music from various saloons and dance halls creates a jumbled symphony. The smell of cooking food mingles with tobacco smoke and alcohol and human sweat. The temperature is finally dropping to something bearable, and there's a pleasant energy in the air, the anticipation of entertainment and vice that drives the frontier economy. You leave the Saratoga and wander through the south side, just observing. A fire eater performs on the street corner, breathing flames into the night air while spectators gasp and applaud. A man with a trained dog puts on a show, making the dog walk on its hind legs and jump through a hoop. People toss coins into a hat and the man thanks them effusively. You see a wedding party emerge from what must be a church or someone's home. A young couple looking nervous and happy, followed by family and friends. They're not wealthy people, working class probably, but they've dressed in their best clothes for the occasion. The bride is wearing a simple dress that's probably the nicest thing she owns, and the groom is in a suit that doesn't quite fit. They're both so young, maybe 17 or 18, but that's normal for this era. People marry young and start having children immediately because life expectancy is short and infant mortality is high, and you need to have many children if you want some to survive to adulthood. The wedding party walks through the street and heads into one of the saloons for a reception. You hear music start up inside, a fiddle and an accordion playing a lively tune, and soon there's dancing and celebration. This is one of the rare moments when the rough frontier shows its gentler side, when community comes together to mark a milestone and wish a couple well. But even this moment is tinged with the harsh realities of frontier life. You overhear an older woman, probably the bride's mother, crying and saying she hopes her daughter survives childbirth. It's a real concern. Many women died in childbirth in this era, and everyone knows someone who has. The celebration is joyful, but underneath there's awareness that life is precarious and nothing is guaranteed. You continue walking, and you come across a different kind of gathering. A group of black cowboys has gathered outside a boarding house, sitting on the porch and in the yard, talking and laughing. They're relaxed in a way you haven't seen other people in Dodge City be. They're among their own, in a space where they feel safe, and the usual guardedness is gone. One man is playing a guitar, not expertly but with feeling, and another is singing, a work song, slow and mournful, about life on the cattle trail. The others listen, some joining in on the chorus. It's a glimpse into a subculture you wouldn't normally see. Black cowboys were common in the Old West, making up perhaps a quarter of all cowboys, but history often erases them or minimizes their presence. You stand at a distance, not wanting to intrude, but one of the men notices you and calls out, "You just going to stand there or you want to come sit?" You're surprised by the invitation, but you accept, walking over and finding a spot on the edge of the group. Nobody asks who you are or what you're doing there. They just make space and continue their conversation. The talk ranges across many topics. The best ranches to work for, which trail bosses are fair and which are tyrants, stories about stampedes and river crossings and narrow escapes from various dangers. One man tells a long, elaborate story about a rattlesnake that got into his bedroll, and the way he tells it is funny and dramatic and has everyone laughing. Another man talks about going up the trail to Montana and seeing country so beautiful it made him want to cry. They share food. Someone has made cornbread and there's some jerky, and a jug of whiskey gets passed around. You take a small drink when it's offered to you, not wanting to seem rude. The whiskey burns going down, but it's smoothed by the warmth of the company. One man asks where you're from, and you give your practiced answer, back east, just travelling, seeing the country. He nods and doesn't push for more details. That's the frontier way. People come from somewhere else. They've got their reasons for being here, and you don't pry too much into their past. The guitar player starts a different song, this one faster and more rhythmic, and a couple of people start clapping along. Someone tries to get you to sing, but you beg off, claiming you don't know the words. They laugh and continue without you, and you just sit there absorbed in this moment of genuine community and fellowship. But eventually you know you need to move on. You thank them for the hospitality, and several people tell you to be safe, to watch yourself, and one older man says, "Whatever you're running from or running to, I hope you find what you're looking for." His words hit you harder than you expected. You thank him and walk away into the night feeling oddly emotional. These people who have so little, who face discrimination and hardship and danger every day, who have every reason to be guarded and suspicious, invited you in and shared what they had. It's a reminder that kindness and community exist even in the roughest circumstances. The night is getting late now, past 11 you estimate. The south side is at peak chaos. The saloons are packed, fights are breaking out with increasing frequency, the music is loud and discordant, and the general lawlessness is on full display. You see the marshal and his deputies making their rounds, breaking up fights, warning men to keep it peaceful, arresting a couple of people who are too drunk or too violent to be left alone. You watch one arrest happen. A man is resisting, fighting against the deputy trying to subdue him, and the deputy finally clubs him over the head with his pistol. The man drops like a stone, blood pouring from his scalp, and the deputy drags him by his arms toward the jail. It's brutal and efficient, and nobody tries to intervene. This is law enforcement in 1883. No Miranda rights, no due process, just immediate physical consequences for resistance. You're ready to leave Dodge City. You've seen enough, experienced enough, and you're starting to feel the psychological weight of being in a place where violence is so casual and life is so cheap. It's been fascinating and educational, and in some ways exhilarating, but you're also exhausted by the constant vigilance, the constant awareness that something bad could happen at any moment. You head back to the Dodge house one last time. You'll sleep for a few hours, then leave before dawn, make your way back to where you hid the time machine, and return to your own era. But sleep doesn't come easily. Your mind is racing with everything you've seen and experienced. The sounds of the town keep you awake. More gunshots, more shouting, breaking glass, laughter, music. Through the thin walls you can hear someone in the next room, a man and a woman. Their activity is obvious from the sounds. The prostitution trade is brisk tonight. You finally drift off sometime after 2 a.m, but it's a light, troubled sleep. You dream about being chased through dark streets, about trying to speak and having no voice come out, about faces looming from shadows. When you wake up at 4:30, you're actually relieved to be awake. You dress in your filthy, dust-covered travelling clothes. You pack your few belongings in your bag. You leave your room key on the table. The clerk is asleep in a chair in the lobby, and you don't want to wake him. You slip out into the pre-dawn darkness. The town is finally quiet. The saloons have closed, or nearly so. The last desperate drinkers and gamblers are staggering home or passing out in alleys. The south side looks tired and dirty in the dim light, the romance of nighttime entertainment, giving way to the sordid reality of morning. You walk east through town, then south toward the river, then west along the riverbank toward the spot where you arrived 2 days ago. The walk takes about 20 minutes. The sky is just starting to lighten, that familiar pre-dawn glow that you've now seen twice in this era. You find your landmark, the 3 rocks in a triangle, and you locate the deadfall where you hid the time machine. You carefully remove the branches and dig through the dirt and grass until your fingers touch metal. Relief floods through you. It's still there, undisturbed. You pull out the device and brush off the dirt. You sit down on the prairie grass and just look at Dodge City one more time. The town is waking up again, smoke rising from chimneys, the first people moving in the streets, the eternal cycle beginning again. From this distance, in this light, it looks almost peaceful, almost romantic. But you know better now. You know what life is really like there, the hardship and danger and casual violence. But you also saw the beauty, the spectacular night sky, the vast prairie, the genuine moments of human connection and kindness. You saw people making the best of difficult circumstances, building communities and lives in a harsh environment. You saw the energy and possibility that drew people west despite all the dangers. A train whistle sounds in the distance, the morning train arriving, bringing more people, more goods, more capital to feed the cycle of commerce that keeps Dodge City alive. You watch the smoke from the locomotive rise into the lightening sky. You think about the people you met or saw, the hotel clerk, the tired waitress, the professional gambler with his expressionless face, the Mexican woman selling tamales, the black cowboys sharing their hospitality, the young couple getting married, the drovers moving their cattle, all of them trying to survive, trying to make a living, trying to find some measure of happiness or satisfaction in a world that offers few guarantees. You think about the violence too, the shootings, the fights, the casual brutality, about a society that's barely held together by minimal law enforcement and rough social codes, about the racism and discrimination that exists alongside moments of surprising tolerance, about the environmental destruction, the slaughtered buffalo, the overgrazed land, the pollution of rivers, about the ongoing genocide of Native Americans that makes all of this possible. The reality of the West is complicated. It's not the simplified version of movies or books. It's not entirely romantic, and it's not entirely horrible. It's human, with all the contradictions that implies. The sun breaks the horizon, and you know it's time to go. You'll be visible soon, and you can't risk someone seeing you disappear. You activate the time machine, and the world begins to shift. The solid ground becomes uncertain. The cool morning air becomes thick and strange. The sounds of Dodge City waking up begin to fade and distort. The light changes, the sky flickers, and you feel that peculiar sensation of being pulled in multiple directions at once. And then you're back. You sit up slowly, feeling disoriented and displaced. Your body aches from the physical demands of the past 2 days. The heat, the walking, the rough sleeping conditions. Your clothes are filthy and you probably smell terrible, but you're back. You're home. You're safe. You feel the weight of that transience, that impermanence. Everyone you met was so vibrantly alive, so present in their moment, and now they're all dust. And someday, everyone alive today will also be dust, and people in the future will look back at our time the way you're looking back at 1883, trying to understand what life was really like, what people really thought and felt and feared and hoped for. You think about your trip, about what you learned, about the gap between myth and reality, about how much easier modern life is in so many ways. The medicine, the safety, the food security, the comfort, and yet how something has been lost too. That directness, that rawness, that immediate relationship with nature and risk and community. You don't romanticize it. You wouldn't want to live there permanently. The dangers were too real, the hardships too severe, the limitations too constraining. But you're glad you went, glad you experienced it. Glad you know now what it was really like instead of just the Hollywood version. You went to Dodge City in 1883. You walked the dusty streets, ate the heavy food, smelled the overwhelming smells, heard the gunshots and the music and the sounds of horses and wagons. You saw genuine violence and genuine kindness. You experienced a world that no longer exists except in memory and history books. And now you're back, forever changed by the knowledge of what came before, what was lost and what was gained in the march toward modernity. And with that, your journey back in time is over. We hope you enjoyed your visit to Dodge City, Kansas in 1883 and learned a thing or two about what life was really like in the Wild West. If you'd like to travel to another time and place, we hope you'll return to our channel for more journeys through history. The remainder of this video will be the calm, relaxing sound of a crackling fire if you want to drift off to sleep or simply ponder your journey. Thanks again for tuning in with Time Travelling History, and we wish you a peaceful night.